My wife hired a trainer to lose weight. Now, she has filed for divorce and started flaunting her new life online, even starting an OnlyFans account. Hello everyone, before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let us keep this channel growing collectively. Thank you very much. Now, let's begin the video. What's up everybody? It's Dave here. Buckle up, because my life recently became a whirlwind. I'm 34, a typical warehouse manager living in Columbus. My life was not glamorous, but it was consistent. I had an excellent career, a great home, and was married to Carla. We had been dating for 5 years, married for 3, and I believed we had a good thing going. Sure, we weren't the romantic pair from TV, but we made it work. Bills were paid, we had date evenings, and the occasional disagreement was simply typical married stuff, or so I thought. Carla decided to embark on a major fitness adventure approximately 6 months ago. It came out of nowhere, but I was already on board. She joined an elite gym downtown that resembled more of a spa than a gym. She hired a personal trainer, Justin, and soon began discussing meal prep, macros, and detox programs. I did not mind. In fact, I encouraged her. Everyone should feel good about themselves, right? Plus, I believed it was simply a phase, similar to her brief knitting passion or her interest in tarot cards. At first, I even pitched in to assist her. I began taking on more of the housework, such as dishes, clothes, and groceries, so she could devote more time to her workouts. I figured that was a way to show her I cared. However, things began to change gradually, and not in a positive way. Carla's ego grew in proportion to her loss of weight. She got fascinated with her reflection, spending hours in front of the mirror perfecting her gym attire or photographing the perfect progress shot for Instagram. She wasn't doing it just for herself. She wanted an audience. I remember once suggesting that we see a movie together. It was Friday night, and I figured we could unwind like old times. She scoffed. "Dave, I don't have time to sit around, I have goals to crush." "Goals? What goals?" I inquired. We weren't discussing running a marathon or conquering Mount Everest. She was simply lifting weights and drinking green sludge. But I just shrugged it off. Perhaps I was being unreasonable. Then came the morning, which began like any other. I was half asleep, nursing my coffee before heading to work, while Carla was drinking her normal kale spinach catastrophe smoothie. She was dressed in her exercise clothes and swiping through her phone as if her life depended on it. She unexpectedly says, "I deserve more in life." I glanced up, still sleepy. "Huh? More of what?" She set down her smoothie and glanced at me, very serious. "My marriage is holding me back, Dave. I'm filing for divorce." I promise, I assumed it was a joke. I even laughed, thinking she was joking with me, but she wasn't. Her expression was stone cold. "I've outgrown this," she replied, as if I were an old piece of furniture she was about to discard. "You wouldn't understand," she explained. I sat there, fully unprepared. My wife, the lady I'd spent years with, casually dropped this on me like it was no big deal. I tried to digest her words, but all I could feel was a mix of amazement and wrath rising in my chest. "What do you mean you've outgrown this?" "Outgrown what?" I questioned you. She sighed, as if I were a child with too many questions. "Dave, I've been working on myself, trying to be the best version of me. And frankly, this life doesn't match my potential anymore. I want more than this house, this routine, this you." Her remark struck me. She did not even sugarcoat it. She saw me as part of the problem. Our existence together was no longer good enough for her. She grabbed her workout bag and walked out the door without saying goodbye. I sat there, staring at the half-empty glass of green sludge she'd left behind, wondering what the heck had happened. The day at work was a blur. I went through the motions, but my thoughts were focused on Carla. Was this real? Was she really abandoning me? We had had disputes previously, but divorce? It was so sudden and premeditated, and the way she said it, as if she'd been practicing this speech for weeks, made it plain she'd already made up her mind. Over the next few days, the flaws in our marriage became more clear. She hardly spoke to me unless it was to divide the house or set up mediation. She began staying out late, claiming she was at the gym or with friends. Her phone was glued to her hand, and her Instagram was flooded with selfies and messages like, "New chapter, who this?" and "Living my best life." Each post was a punch in the face, a reminder that she'd already moved on mentally, even though the paperwork hadn't been signed. One night, while looking through my own social media, I saw she had deleted every photograph of us, wedding photos and anniversary messages. It was as if I had been removed from her life totally. Meanwhile, her new photos were flooded with likes and comments from people praising her. "You're glowing. Such an inspiration." It made me sick. None of these individuals realized who Carla really was or what she was putting me through. Another night, I overheard her on the phone as I was preparing for work. She was in the kitchen, speaking to someone in that phony, syrupy tone she used when she wanted something. "Yeah, I just feel so free now," she explained. "I'm finally doing what makes me happy." She paused and giggled. He doesn't even get it. He's stuck in the past. That was when it hit me. Carla wasn't simply leaving me. She was reinventing herself, and I was the anchor she was letting go. But here's the thing, I'm not the type of man to just roll over and accept it. She expected to steamroll me and go away with everything, but she was in for an unpleasant awakening. This was simply the beginning, and Carla might expect a fight. But wait, things get worse. One afternoon, I'm having lunch at a bistro near work. I was minding my own business, looking through my phone, when I overheard these two guys at the next table. They're talking about a fitness model they discovered online. I didn't pay much attention till one of them said her name, Carla. My stomach sank. They were giggling as they discussed how she had some premium content to promote. At first, I thought, no way, not Carla. But then one of them pulled up her Instagram on his phone. It was my Carla. They discussed how she had begun teasing an OnlyFans account by placing links in her bio, such as for the real workouts. My blood boiled. This was not merely a fitness phase. She was turning her newfound freedom into a full-fledged thirst trap for money. When I arrived home, I confronted her. She was seated on the couch, scrolling through her phone as if nothing had occurred. "Carla," I asked, attempting to remain calm. "What the hell is this OnlyFans thing I'm hearing about?" She looked up, unaffected. "It's my body, Dave, my choice, and it's none of your business anymore." I couldn't believe she had the nerve. "None of my business? We're still married. You're out here selling yourself on the internet while I'm trying to hold our lives together." She rolled her eyes, as if I were some ancient relic who didn't get it. "I'm not selling myself, it's content creation. Plenty of people do it. Besides, it's not like you're paying my bills anymore." That's when it struck me. Carla wanted more than just a divorce. She wanted a new life. A life in which she was the star, the main character, and I was simply an extra she had written off. She was neither embarrassed nor remorseful. If anything, she felt proud, as if she had finally discovered her real calling as an internet spectacle. Her actions continued to grow over the next few weeks. She began dressing as if she were auditioning for a reality show, with tight clothes, sky-high heels, and makeup applied like icing. Every time she walked out the door, she appeared to be heading to a red carpet event rather than the grocery store. The titles got worse. "Living My Truth, No More Holding Back." And the one that made me want to toss my phone. "She's not a wife anymore, she's a force of nature." The arrogance. While Carla was out playing superstar, I was left to deal with the consequences. Lawyers, paperwork, and so on. Carla, however, was not as untouchable as she had believed. My lawyer, Steve, an absolute gem, had been doing some investigation. It turns out she has been seeing a gold digger, but with a gym membership. I believe you can guess who I'm talking about. Stay tuned, everyone. Things are going to become messy. I will provide an update as soon as possible. Update 1. What's up again, Reddit? It's Dave, your favorite soon-to-be divorced dude, and I have a front row seat to my ex's drama-fueled glow-up disaster. If you've been following along, you know that my wife, Carla, decided she was too good for this life, abandoned me, and has been parading around town like a fitness celebrity. But first, let's talk about Justin, the man who has been fueling this entire catastrophe. Yes, her personal trainer. Really unique, right? The moment I heard his name, I realized it wasn't simply another trainer-client connection. Justin was the type of guy you'd expect to see on a reality dating show. Shredded, spray-tanned, and about the size of a puddle. He was all charisma, biceps, and smirks, as if he had wandered out of a horrible rom-com. Carla was very open about their relationship. One day, she strode into the home after her workout, virtually glowing. "Justin says I'm the strongest I've ever been," she boasted, without looking at me. "Yeah, Carla. I'm sure Justin also told you he's never trained anyone like you before, because that's his script." A few weeks later, she stopped pretending it was just an exercise. She began mentioning his name in everyday conversations. "Justin's taking me to this new vegan restaurant, and Justin said this protein powder is life-changing." Meanwhile, I'm standing there like, do I look concerned? Carla wasn't simply dropping names. She was parading him as if he were the prize. Word spread quickly. Friends began contacting me with sightings of Carla and Justin throughout town. They were holding hands, laughing, and behaving like the Instagram couple of the year. Carla did not even bother to hide it. She came home one night, as brash as ever, and said, "Just so you know, Justin and I are dating now. I think it's time you accepted that." "Oh, I accepted it, all right," I said. Accepted that my wife had turned into a full-blown caricature of entitlement. She'd already psychologically divorced me, so what did it matter if she added a public affair to her resume? The more I discovered about Justin, the hotter my blood became. He wasn't your typical gym bro. This individual had a past. My lawyer, Steve, who deserves a freaking medal at this point, did some research and discovered that Justin had pulled this stunt previously, twice actually. He had a pattern. Find a married woman, shower her with compliments and affirmation, and then urge her to leave her spouse. When the dust settled and the money stopped coming, he'd disappear like Houdini. Justin was a professional home wrecker. It was not love, it was a hustle. He pumped these ladies up, made them believe they were invincible, and rode their wave until it was no longer convenient. And Carla? She was the ideal mark. She sought attention and approval, just like a fish craves water. Justin had her wrapped around his finger, and she didn't realize it. The worst part was his smug attitude about it. I heard from mutual acquaintances that Justin was already discussing their major plans. He reportedly told someone, "Once the divorce is finalized, Carla and I are going to build an empire." Empire? Dude, you are a trainer, not a tech mogul. But, certainly, dream big. Justin was banking not just on Carla's money, but also on mine. Carla demanded half of my funds, spousal support, and even tried to take the house. She imagined she could stroll into court, play the victim, and walk out with a golden ticket to her and Justin's new life. Little did she know, my lawyer had receipts, and I wasn't going to give up. Let me paint a picture of Carla and Justin as a couple. Imagine a guy who only owns tank shirts standing next to a lady who suddenly believes she is a Kardashian. They were all over social media, posing in front of nice cars, not their own, and tagging themselves at costly restaurants. I'm guessing Carla was paying the tab. It was as if they were screaming, "Look at us, we're winning." But anyone with half a brain could tell they were overcompensating. Their partnership was not without flaws, however. Justin's over-the-top personality began to conflict with Carla's developing diva mentality. One night, I heard Mom on the phone in the kitchen, shouting with someone. "I don't care what your exes said about you, Justin. You're with me now, and I deserve better than your baggage." I didn't catch the rest, but it was enough to convince me that their little fantasy wasn't as flawless as they wanted everyone to believe. As much as it irritated me, there was something strangely fulfilling about seeing Carla go all in on Justin. She'd put everything on this guy, believing he was the key to a better life, and it was only a matter of time before the house of cards collapsed. My lawyer and I were making certain of that. Carla's confidence dipped after mediation. She entered the room acting like Beyoncé and exited looking like a deer in headlights. It was beautiful. Justin, her ever-loyal hype guy, did not even attempt to console her. He simply sulked behind her, scrolling through his phone. That was my first indication that their small empire was not as strong as Carla had led everyone to believe. But let's go back a little bit. Mediation was not only a setback for Carla, it was a calamity. She expected to come in, cry a little, and go with the house, half my savings, and spousal support. Carla's counsel portrayed her as an underappreciated wife who gave up all for my mediocre goals. Do you have mediocre dreams? I'd been working my ass off at this warehouse job for years. Steve, my lawyer, was prepared. He provided spreadsheets, screenshots, and even credit card stubs to back up my claims. Carla had been depleting our joint account for months before she filed for divorce. We're talking luxury spa days, expensive outfits, and $200 dinners while I'm eating leftovers and attempting to find out what went wrong. Steve made sure the court saw every dime she squandered. Then came Justin's skeletons, his previous romances, his habit of sweet-talking married women, and how he always bailed when the money didn't flow as planned. What about the cherry on top? Steve discovered messages from one of Justin's exes urging Carla to be cautious. Of course, Carla refused to listen. She felt she was unique. Justin's smirk was also gone. In fact, he appeared uneasy. He probably saw his little scheme was crumbling in real time. Carla attempted to defend him, stating, "Justin isn't like that anymore." However, the evidence was stacked against them. The judge didn't buy their act. By the end of the session, it was evident Carla wasn't going to walk away with the riches she expected. Justin? He appeared to be already plotting his exit route. Carla began acting out after the mediation session. She wasn't as arrogant anymore. She continued to post uplifting rubbish on Instagram, but the captions became frantic. Instead of living my best life, Carla said things like, "Growth isn't always easy, but it's worth it. Keep reminding yourself of this." Justin, on the other hand, revealed his true colors. He was still present, but not in the way Carla described. He began skipping their public appearances, no more hand-holding at posh restaurants or couple goals gym photos. Word spread that he was already flirting with one of his other clients, a younger woman who did not come with Carla's baggage. Typical. Carla was late getting home one night. I was still living in the house with her at the time, as I couldn't legally kick her out. She stumbled in, looking completely exhausted. I didn't say anything, I simply sat there on the couch, observing her. She placed her fancy bag on the counter and sighed dramatically, as if she wanted me to ask what was wrong. But I was not playing that game. I just went inside my room. Carla tried to act normal the next morning. She went around the kitchen preparing one of her kale smoothies, but her typical smugness had vanished. "Justin's been busy with his clients," she announced unexpectedly. I did not respond. I knew she wanted me to bite and ask about him, but I wasn't giving her what she wanted. A week later, the real drama began. Steve called me. Carla apparently filed some last-minute paperwork in an attempt to claim additional assets. She demanded emotional compensation for the stress I had given her during our marriage. Yes, you read it correctly. Carla believed she might acquire more money by blaming me for her midlife crisis. I couldn't believe their arrogance. Steve, being the legend that he is, was already ready for this crap. He filed a countersuit, demonstrating how Carla had depleted our funds and emotionally manipulated the situation to her advantage. He even used her Instagram posts as evidence. The subtitles alone were great, proving that she wasn't some stressed-out victim, but rather a self-absorbed diva living her best life at my cost. Around this point, Justin officially quit. He stopped showing up to their gym sessions, stopped returning her calls, and even blocked her on Instagram. Yes, it's blocked. Carla was losing it. I could hear her pacing around the house, calling him repeatedly. "Justin, call me back. We need to talk." She sounded desperate, and it was actually satisfying. Finally, one of her companions spilled the tea. Justin had moved on to another client, someone younger, flashier, and, more crucially, not involved in a difficult divorce. Carla was devastated. She tried to keep things cool by posting cryptic comments like, "Sometimes people aren't who they seem," and, "You can't build an empire with someone who's playing games." But everyone understood what had transpired. Her ideal man had bailed the moment things became tough. This is when Carla's entitlement began to shatter. She has stopped attending the gym. Her once glamorous ensembles were replaced by sweatshirts and unkempt hairstyles. She even stopped posting on Instagram for a spell, which was really surprising. It was as if her entire identity was linked to Justin and the vision of their new life. Without him, she had no idea what to do. One evening, she attempted to speak with me. "Dave," she started, standing in the living room doorway, "I think we need to reevaluate everything. This divorce, it's been hard on both of us." I gazed at her, waiting for the punchline. "What are you getting at, Carla?" She sighed heavily, as if she were the victim here. "I just think maybe we rushed into all of this. I mean, we had good times, didn't we?" I nearly laughed. "Carla, you filed for divorce. You told me I was holding you back, remember? Now that Justin's gone, you're having second thoughts? Unbelievable." She tried to play the compassion game by mentioning how lonely she was and how much she had given for this marriage, but I wasn't buying it. "Carla," I interrupted, "you made your bed. Now lie in it." Carla's tiny fantasy world was collapsing, and I didn't have to raise a finger. Karma was doing all of the work. That's all for now, Reddit. I'll keep you posted after the final court ruling, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Update 2. Hey, Reddit. Dave is back. You've stayed with me this long, so prepare for the grand slam of this whole disaster. If you've been following along, Carla, my ex-wife, believed she could go to court, take everything, and begin her new life with Justin, her personal trainer. But karma came calling, and we're now in the home stretch. Let me explain how the courtroom drama unfolded and why Carla probably wishes she hadn't gone in there. Court day eventually arrived. Carla stepped in, but not with the usual diva strut I'd come to expect. No fancy blazer, no cocky grin, just her and her lawyer, marching into detention with the confidence of 2 children. She must have realized things weren't going to go her way. The energy was off, and I honestly enjoyed every moment of it. On the other side, I was with my lawyer, Steve. He arrived prepared, carrying a thick binder that could have served as a doorstop. I was not nervous at this time. I had nothing to lose. Carla had already thrown all of her punches, and I was still standing. Today was about ensuring that I not only survived, but also won. Carla's lawyer began by presenting her emotional compensation claim, which I mentioned earlier, portraying a picture of Carla as a patient wife who had been emotionally exhausted by my lack of support for her personal development. Apparently, my failure to support her fitness journey, also known as her affair with Justin, was a sort of neglect. Steve, my lawyer, let her lawyer speak for a long, enabling them to dig their own hole. Then it was our turn. Steve began by meticulously demolishing their argument. He demonstrated that I had not only supported Carla, but had gone above and above on her so-called fitness journey. He provided evidence that I had taken over home tasks, modified my work schedule, and even pushed her to pursue her ambitions. He read aloud text conversations in which I offered to make her healthy meals, encouraged her gym sessions, and even suggested we join couples fitness classes to deepen our bond. Then Steve dropped the bombshell. Carla's emotional compensation claim was not only unfounded, it was a clear attempt to conceal her own emotional carelessness. He showed emails and texts in which Carla openly mocked me to her friends, calling me dull and dead weight. He also had screenshots of her gushing about Justin and referring to me as her backup plan. The final nail in Carla's coffin came when Steve addressed the financial side of her claim. He showed us our bank statements, revealing how Carla had diverted thousands of dollars from our joint account to fund her lavish lifestyle. Carla's lawyer attempted to argue, but Steve refused to give up. He disclosed the ultimate piece of evidence, Carla's journal entry, which Steve had subpoenaed. Carla had written about her master plan to leave me, get whatever she could out of this marriage, and use the settlement money to start a new life with Justin. When the judge read that, his expression was one of complete amazement. The courtroom was dead silent as the judge flipped through the documents, his stern look becoming more intense with each page. Carla sat next to her lawyer, looking agitated, her polished nails nervously pounding on the table. Her confidence, which she had displayed so brazenly during mediation, had vanished into thin air. I sat across from her with my lawyer, Steve, feeling a mixture of expectation and joy. This was it. The moment Carla's tale would crumble. The judge began by considering Carla's emotional compensation claim. Mrs. Patterson, he continued, his voice steady yet forceful. Your request for emotional compensation lacks any substantive evidence. He stopped, allowing the words to sink in before continuing. While emotional anguish is a relevant component in some situations, this court expects concrete and demonstrative evidence. Your claims are based on subjective sentiments rather than facts. He focused his attention on Steve's counter-arguments. He detailed phone conversations, bank accounts, and Instagram posts that depicted a far different picture than Carla and her lawyer had attempted to present. Mr. Patterson, the judge continued, speaking to me for the first time. You've shown a clear and consistent pattern of support for your wife throughout the marriage. The evidence presented indicates no signs of emotional maltreatment. In reality, it indicates the reverse. You went above and beyond to meet her requirements and expectations. Carla's lawyer attempted to interject, but stumbled over an objection that the evidence was taken out of context. The judge silenced him with a raised hand. The context is clear, counselor. Let him move on. The judge next went to the financial element of the issue. He painstakingly examined the evidence Steve had supplied. Mrs. Patterson, the magistrate said in a stern voice, you withdrew over $223,000 from your joint accounts in the period leading up to this divorce filing. These funds were not used for household expenses or shared needs. Instead, they were spent on luxury items, high-end dining, and personal indulgences. The court finds this behavior irresponsible and in direct violation of your marital financial obligations. Carla shivered in her seat, her face flushed deeply crimson. Her counsel attempted to downplay the expenditure, stating that it was part of her coping technique during a tough period. The judge wasn't impressed. Coping mechanisms do not justify financial recklessness, he stated emphatically. Then I came home. Carla had boldly asserted her right to half of it, stating she had contributed emotionally, if not financially, to its upkeep. Steve was prepared for this. He presented paperwork proving that I had paid the mortgage in full, maintained the property, and even handled renovations, all while Carla contributed nothing. The judge did not mince words. The house will remain the property of Mr. Patterson, his announcement stated. Mrs. Patterson, you have no financial claim to it based on the evidence presented. Carla's jaw dropped. Her lawyer whispered something into her ear, but she waved him away, too astonished to answer. The judge was not done. Furthermore, he went on. Due to the unauthorized use of marital funds, Mrs. Patterson is ordered to reimburse Mr. Patterson in the amount of $23,750. You could have heard a pin drop. Carla's lawyer sagged in his chair, clearly defeated. Carla appeared to have lost her breath. Her carefully constructed narrative had fallen spectacularly, leaving her with only the repercussions of her actions. The decision was final, no appeals or loopholes. The judge closed his folder and announced, "This court is adjourned." I relaxed back in my chair, a sense of relief sweeping over me. Justice had been served, and I felt free to breathe for the first time in months. The anxiety in the air as we left the courtroom was apparent. Carla's lawyer was already packing his suitcase and avoiding eye contact with everyone. Carla walked following him, her head lowered. For someone who had entered this process with the confidence of a reality TV star, she suddenly appeared completely defeated. Steve rubbed my back as we walked out. "We did it," he added with a slight smile. I nodded, appreciating his work. He had not only supported me, but also revealed the truth about Carla's manipulating ways. As I left the courthouse, I couldn't help but look back at Carla. She remained standing there, staring blankly at the floor. For a fleeting moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy, but it immediately disappeared. She had caused this pandemonium, and now she had to face the repercussions. Over the next few days, the consequences of the decision became abundantly clear. Carla was told to leave the residence within 30 days, and I made sure to enforce it. She tried to stall, stating she needed more time to organize her affairs, but I wouldn't budge. I informed her that she'd had plenty of time to prepare while she was busy bragging about her affair with Justin. But reluctantly, she packed her belongings and moved out. It was surprisingly pleasant to watch her leave on that final day. She piled her luxury bags into an ancient automobile, which one of her friends had reportedly loaned her, and drove away without saying goodbye. The house, which had before been filled with tension and hostility, felt unexpectedly tranquil. Carla's financial position deteriorated dramatically. She was left to fend for herself because she no longer had access to my income or the marital funds she had been draining. She attempted to sell some of her fancy clothes and handbags, but it was insufficient to repay the sum she owed me. Word spread that she was borrowing money from friends, who were rapidly bored of hearing her sob stories. Justin, however, has completely vanished. He didn't respond to her calls or messages. Carla unexpectedly arrived at the residence one night, roughly 2 weeks after the verdict. I opened the door to see her standing there, her once perfect beauty replaced by unkempt hair and haggard eyes. She looked like she hadn't slept for days. "Dave," she replied gently, her voice cracking. "Can we talk?" I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. "What do you want, Carla?" I inquired. She hesitated and wrung her hands. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I made mistakes, big ones. I let Justin manipulate me. I got caught up in this fantasy, and I ruined everything." Her comments seemed scripted, but the despair in her eyes was genuine. She didn't come to apologize out of true remorse. She was here because she had no other options. "I don't know what you expect me to say," I said, my tone calm but forceful. "You made your choices. You chose Justin. You chose to try and take everything from me, and now you're dealing with the fallout." Tears welled in her eyes. "I just can't. We at least be civil? Maybe start over?" "I have nothing, Dave. I'm lost." I looked at her for a time, feeling nothing but resolve. "Carla, I gave you everything, my support, my trust, my love, and you threw it all away. You don't get to come back now and ask for a second chance. That's not how this works." She fell down sobbing on my porch, but I didn't move. After a time, I returned inside and shut the door, leaving her alone with her regrets. Since then, I've moved on. Carla, according to what I've heard, is still battling to get back on her feet. She's destroyed bridges, lost friends, and is now facing the consequences of her own actions. Sometimes karma doesn't just knock. It kicks down the door. Carla was left with only the repercussions of her deeds. My mother admitted to hating me simply because I was an unplanned child. At my wedding, my parents chose his party over mine. This is about how my family relationship totally collapsed once I married Emily, who is 25F. I am 26M and in my last year of medical school. My mother has consistently given preference to my older brother, Marcus, who is 27 years old, over me. She has loved Marcus since we were kids and she has never concealed it from me. I'm not sure what it is about him that makes him her favorite. My parents chose to give me to my grandparents to raise for 8 years after I was born, only a year after Marcus. Taking care of Marcus and me simultaneously was too much for my mother to handle. My mother struggled to care for us both because she was suffering from postpartum depression, according to my grandparents. My mother intended to give me up to my grandparents, George and Eleanor Cooper, who saw the seriousness of her illness and didn't fight too hard. Robert, my 52-meter-tall father, was unable to care for me by himself while working. I grew up in my grandparents' loving and contented home, feeling safe and content because I was unaware as a newborn that they were not my own parents. But things started to change when I was able to walk and comprehend speech. Occasionally, my parents would pay me a visit and explain that they were my biological parents and that I was only temporarily staying with my grandparents. For me, these visits were always perplexing and bittersweet. I was thrilled to see my folks, on the one hand. Conversely, I experienced a feeling of bewilderment and desolation. After playing and chatting with me for 2 to 3 hours, my parents would say farewell and head back home, taking Marcus with them. I realized that Marcus was always their top focus as this trend persisted. My parents' few visits made me feel unwelcome, even though my grandparents gave me all the love and attention they could. My parents finally took me back home when I turned 8 years old. I was initially thrilled to see my family again and be reunited with them. But as I realized how much better my life had been with my grandparents, the excitement gradually subsided. Living in the same room as Marcus was one of the first adjustments I had to make. My parents had the option of giving me a spare bedroom, but Marcus had always had his own. In order for Marcus and I to become brothers, they insisted that we share a room. Marcus made it quite evident to me that he detested this new arrangement. Marcus would label me a brat and a stranger if I read comic books my grandparents had bought me or played too loudly. Marcus would scoff and call me childish if I attempted to adorn my side of the room with posters or sketches of my favorite superheroes. Marcus would roll his eyes and mockingly refer to me as the teacher's pet if I proudly showed my parents my good grades when I brought them home. Marcus would tell me that I sounded terrible and that I should give up when I practiced playing the keyboard that my grandparents had given me. Marcus would make fun of me for even the smallest things, such as the way I arranged my toys or the way I described my day. The term dork or nerd would be used to describe me whenever I expressed an interest in reading or learning something new. I eventually came to the realization that the activities I liked turned into points of friction. There was a persistent sense of tension and conflict in place of the warmth and welcome I had experienced at my grandparents' house. Everything I did was problematic for Marcus, which made me feel self-conscious. Imagine being teased for every little thing by your older brother, someone you admire. It causes you to begin questioning yourself. I was too young to realize that he was really bullying me. I wanted to blend in with my family because I felt like I might be the issue. I only read my comic books in the school library after I stopped doing so at home. I completely quit using my keyboard. I did all of this in the hopes that if I changed, my brother would accept me. Unfortunately, Marcus's attitude toward me didn't change despite my best efforts to fit in and adapt. I felt like I was losing a piece of myself the more I attempted to win his approval. Marcus would still find ways to make fun of me even after I stopped doing all the things that irritated him. Due to a skin problem that has since been treated, I recall having a lot of pimples as a child. Marcus would continuously comment on how awful my face was and how ugly I looked. I would cry and go to my parents since hearing this was so painful. My mother, Linda, 50F, would encourage me to stop sobbing and be a man instead of standing by me and reprimanding Marcus. Dad was also of little assistance. He would want to avoid the situation. Instead of coming to Mom, she would advise me that I should confront my brother. I felt lost and alone as a result of Marcus's bullying and my parents' incapacity to provide me with a sense of security and love. I missed the supportive atmosphere I shared with my grandparents, where I always felt appreciated and understood. Whenever they could, my grandparents would come see me, and they would attempt to speak to Marcus politely and warn him not to bother me. However, he never gave them any attention. I gradually turned into a very irate teenager as I grew older. Marcus did not like it at all when I became taller than him, despite the fact that he was older than me. To annoy me, he would label me a slender man or a giant because of my height. But this time, I began returning the favor by calling him a shrimp rather than requesting assistance from my parents. In order to prevent him from reaching his books without a chair, I would purposefully place them on the highest shelf or above the cabinet. This would give me an excuse to tease him. Even though I occasionally received reprimands for retaliating against him when he complained to our parents, I still felt a mixture of delight and remorse. It was satisfying to defend myself, but it also meant that our house was growing more antagonistic. We fought each other more often and fiercely, none of us prepared to give up. The annual awards ceremony at my school was the final straw that made it clear to me how much my parents preferred my brother above me. I was on the verge of winning the top prize in my class since I had put my all into my academics. I hoped for my parents' pride and encouragement, so I wanted their support and attendance at the event. However, my mother told me a few days prior to the ceremony that Marcus had a swimming competition on the same day. Even though his competition and my ceremony were hours apart, Marcus wanted to concentrate on his preparation because, in my mother's opinion, he needed her more. My dad would be there to support me, she told me. I accepted the fact that at least one parent would support me, despite my disappointment. I was taken aback when my dad unexpectedly failed to show up on the day of the wedding. Marcus was having a panic attack before his competition, and my mom apparently contacted him immediately to tell him that she needed him there to help him relax. Dad decided not to attend my awards ceremony and instead hurried to Marcus's side. I recall that there were no recognized faces in the audience supporting me when I approached to accept my medal. All I could feel was a deep sense of abandonment and loneliness. Marcus and my dad weren't there when I got home later. When I contacted them, I found out that they were still with Marcus. It took them many hours to return, ecstatic and celebrating Marcus's triumph in his contest. They informed me how wonderfully he had done and he was holding an award. As though it were the most important thing of the year, they gave him a tight hug and congratulated him on his achievements. They didn't even offer me an apology for being absent from my ceremony. It was obviously a sobering reminder of my place in my parents' priorities. In contrast to Marcus, I was often overlooked and undervalued despite my efforts and accomplishments. Throughout my time in college, this trend persisted. My parents had a great celebration when Marcus was accepted to a nearby public institution, but they hardly noticed my acceptance to medical school. My mother continued to disparage Emily, a talented medical researcher, even after I began dating her. She would say that Emily was too focused on her profession and not enough on her family, and that I should look for someone more conventional, like Marcus's girlfriend. Let's move on to the primary motivation behind this writing. I asked Emily to marry me 6 months ago, and she accepted. I had conflicting responses when I told my parents about the engagement out of courtesy and because I wanted them to hear the news from me rather than from someone else. My mom said nothing, but my dad thanked me and appeared really delighted for me. She then texted me to let me know how disappointed she was that I hadn't given her voice regarding Emily. I invited Marcus and everyone else to the wedding 2 months ago. Even though he didn't congratulate me after we got engaged, I still didn't feel bad about this and invited him to the wedding. I was a little let down when Marcus unexpectedly denied the invitation without providing an explanation. What really surprised me though, was when my dad called to let me know that my mom had chosen not to attend my wedding, even though he would be there. I was surprised and inquired as to why. My mom was going to my wedding, but my dad clarified that Marcus had allegedly scheduled an anniversary party for his girlfriend on the same day. I followed Marcus on social media and knew they had recently celebrated their anniversary, so this news was strange. I chose to speak with Marcus directly to get clarification rather than initially going up against my mother. Even though we didn't talk much, I wanted to treat the matter with dignity and respect. I gave Marcus a call and asked him directly if he was truly not intending to attend my wedding because of the anniversary party. Marcus surprised me by confirming that this was true. He clarified that at first, he and his girlfriend had intended to have a party to honor their anniversary, but they lacked the necessary funds. Marcus acknowledged that he had worked hard to find a unique location for their celebration that was within their means in order to make up for it to his fiancée. Unfortunately, he stated that my wedding day coincided with the venue's only available date. I apologized and politely pointed out that he could have picked a different day, highlighting how much I would have valued his attendance at my wedding. Marcus, however, responded that his girlfriend's pleasure was more important than anything else and made it plain that he wouldn't move their anniversary celebration date to fit my wedding schedule. His remarks were hurtful, and he ended the phone before I could respond. My mother provided the same old justification she frequently gave me when I phoned her to discuss the matter. She stressed that my dad was already going to attend my wedding, so I shouldn't be selfish and ask her to go too. And that Marcus would be upset if she didn't go to his anniversary celebration. My voice nearly broke as I told her how hurtful it was for me to always feel like she treated me less than my brother. I told her that although she was free to do as she pleased, I would no longer recognize her as a parent. My mother then laughed at what I had said and advised me not to get so worked up over my wedding. I decided to stop talking to my mother completely after the argument we had over her decision to not come to my wedding. My attention turned to making sure Emily had the most exquisite wedding and that our celebration was full of love and happiness. Even though I was disappointed with my parents, I was thankful that my dad kept his word and supported me on my special day. My grandparents, who had previously expected my mom's absence despite their encouragement, were naturally saddened and disappointed when Emily and I ultimately were married. They had even forewarned my mother in advance, stressing how crucial her attendance was. They were deeply affected by the fact that she still decided not to go. The situation worsened when Marcus posted photos from his anniversary celebration, in which my mother was seen drinking and dancing uncontrollably. The way they both appeared to show off their indifference to my feelings regarding their absence from my wedding was the problem, not what she was doing. That's the current situation. Throughout the day, my mother never once phoned Emily or me to say hello or to offer congratulations. Though I'm not sure how to move on, I do know that I can't allow them to continue to harm me in this way. Emily is understandably upset with their treatment of us, particularly with reference to our wedding, but she supports any choice I make. Is my desire to sever all contact with my mother and brother an overreaction? Is it time to accept that they will never change and move on with my life without them, or should I give them another chance to make things right? First update. My wedding was a month ago, and since then things have taken an unexpected turn. I got a ton of encouraging notes after I last posted about my mom picking my brother's anniversary party over my wedding. I appreciate all of your nice remarks and guidance. What has transpired since then is as follows. Although my grandparents, George and Eleanor, have always been my staunchest allies, I never thought they would act in such an extreme manner. They told my mother last week that they might take her out of their inheritance and leave me as the only heir. They said that their choice was the result of years of witnessing her ignore me and favor Marcus, not just the fact that she missed my wedding. According to my grandmother, she and my mother had a furious discussion during which she detailed all of the instances of favoritism she had seen over the years. She cited specific instances, such as my mother's unrelenting criticism of Emily, the disregard for my academic accomplishments, and her decision to go to Marcus's hurriedly organized anniversary party rather than my wedding. The way my mother reacted to this news was what truly surprised me. She called me nonstop within hours of finding out she might not be able to inherit. She was crying about the inheritance, not our tense relationship or the harm she had caused, when I eventually answered one of her calls. In fact, she asked, "How could you have allowed your grandparents to harm me like this? I am their daughter." Then she made a startling suggestion. In order for her to attend, she recommended that Emily and I conduct another wedding ceremony, this time with only close family members. She said she wanted to put things right after giving her actions a lot of thought. But when she promptly followed up with, "Once we do this, you can tell your grandparents everything is fine between us," her comments seemed false. Her attempt to explain her prior absence by stating, "You have to understand, Marcus needed me that day," was the most bizarre aspect. They had already paid for the location, and his partner was going through a difficult moment. What should I have done? She was still unable to recognize how her decisions had harmed me. Marcus also became involved and texted me in a furious manner. He said that I was manipulating our grandparents and making them hostile to the family. He wrote, "You've always been their favorite, and now you're using that to steal Mom's inheritance." He didn't appear to see the irony of his criticism of favoritism. Emily was also contacted on social media by his girlfriend, who said that they were being unkind to Marcus by interfering with their anniversary celebration with all of this family drama. Emily replied, "Interesting how you're concerned about your anniversary celebration being ruined when you deliberately scheduled it on our wedding day," before blocking her right away. My father is now stuck in the middle, even though he was at least there during our wedding. He tried to be a mediator when he called me yesterday. He remarked, "Your mother truly regrets missing the wedding. Is it not possible for you to perform this minor ceremony for her? It would mean so much." He was silent for a while before acknowledging, "She's not handling this well, but she does love you." After I brought up the fact that Mom appeared more focused on the inheritance than our relationship. Emily and I spoke about holding another ceremony, but we both felt that it would not feel genuine. "A wedding isn't just a photo opportunity," Emily said. "It's about sharing love with those who truly care about us. Your mother had the opportunity to attend but declined. The fact that my mother has begun to alter history is especially upsetting. She is explaining to her family that she was forced to miss the wedding since Marcus needed her assistance during a trying moment. Conveniently, she is omitting the fact that it was an anniversary celebration that was purposefully planned on the day of our wedding. Mom's sister, my aunt, called me lately to tell me about something fascinating. It seems that before the wedding, my mother had informed her that she was teaching me a lesson by not going. She assumed that I would abruptly give in and move our appointment to accommodate Marcus's party. She was truly surprised that I had planned the wedding without her when that didn't occur. Last week's phone conversation with Marcus was the most illuminating. Perhaps driven by resentment over the inheritance issue, he revealed in a rare moment of candor that there were other dates open for the anniversary celebration. His fiancée thought it would be lovely to celebrate on the same day as a family wedding, so they decided on our wedding date out of a number of alternatives. "You've always had everything handed to you by our grandparents," he said chillingly when I questioned why he would intentionally harm me in that way. It's time you experienced what it's like to be disappointed. Through it all, Emily has been my pillar of support. She made a point that I hadn't thought of. My mother's sudden desire for a fresh ceremony isn't motivated by a want to commemorate our marriage, but rather by her wish to be a caring mother for our grandparents. Emily claimed that if she truly wanted to make amends, she would be expressing regret for years of favoritism rather than only attempting to set up a picture op. I am steadfast in my resolve to forego another ceremony. This is about upholding boundaries and self-respect, not about retaliation or retribution. My mother had the chance to be present on one of the most significant days of my life, but she declined. That fact cannot be altered by any number of contrived pictures or theatrical rituals. I'm currently not in communication with Marcus and only have sporadic contact with my parents. My grandparents have been quite supportive of this choice, telling me that sometimes the best course of action is to avoid harmful people. I'm resolutely pursuing my medical education while Emily and I concentrate on creating our future together. Sincerely, I feel lighter after standing my ground, even though I realize this update may come across as resentful. Yes, it is difficult to know that my brother purposefully attempted to overshadow my wedding day, and it is painful that my mother is more concerned with her inheritance than with our relationship. However, I'm not questioning myself or attempting to win their approval for the first time in my life. Perhaps learning to accept the family we have while forming the family we require is what it truly means to grow up. Update 2. 2 weeks have passed since my last update, and the matter is now resolved. My grandfather, George, called me yesterday to let me know that he and Grandma Eleanor had formally created new wills that excluded my mother entirely and named me as their only heir. Even though I had expected this to happen following my previous post, it still surprised me to hear it formally. My grandfather clarified that my mother's treatment of me wasn't the only factor in their choice. They think that I would be able to care for them in their later years more effectively than my mother could. He said that they had faith in my abilities to handle their money sensibly as a future doctor and that, "We trust you won't abandon us to a care facility unless absolutely necessary." As you might imagine, my mother, Linda, has not been pleased with this news. She has been phoning me nonstop and messaging me, saying I have no right to inherit anything from her parents and that I have deceived her. Despite the fact that I haven't gotten anything yet, it seems as though she believes I am stealing from her. She reacted with charges that I had swayed her in their favor when I adamantly advised her to speak with my grandparents directly about her concerns. I reminded her that any modifications to their will were a direct result of the things she had done over the years that had caused friction between us and affected their choice. As our disagreement heated up, she revealed something extremely upsetting in a moment of unadulterated honesty, or maybe resentment. She expressed her wish that I had never been created. She accused me of creating her postpartum depression and disclosed that I was an unplanned pregnancy. The most startling aspect was when she acknowledged that she had originally thought about placing me for adoption in order to get rid of me, but she changed her mind due to her parents' conservative beliefs and chose to have them take care of me instead. "With Marcus, things were always easier," she remarked. "He never required the same level of care that you did. I never felt inadequate as a mother because of him." At last, her comments clarified everything. She was partial to Marcus because she felt guilty and resentful of me, not because she wanted to love him more. For the first time since the wedding, I contacted my father, Robert, following that chat. He told me that he never regretted having me, even though he admitted that some of Mom's statements regarding my unplanned pregnancy and her battles with postpartum depression were accurate. He genuinely apologized for the first time after I told him how their years of favoritism toward Marcus had terribly wounded me. My dad has acknowledged my decision to give me some space, even though I'm not sure how we will continue to be friends. He now appears to realize how his passive part in my upbringing fueled the dysfunction in the family. Given how much I admired Marcus when we were younger, I sent him one last text telling him how he could have been a better and more encouraging brother. When I moved home with our parents, I talked openly about how lonely I felt growing up with our grandparents and how much I desired his approval. I made it plain that I had no grudges toward him for being Mom's favorite. He didn't, but I informed him that he had the option to be a supportive part of my life rather than compete with me. As an elder brother, I also expressed my disappointment in him and said I was ending our connection. His number is blocked, and I don't currently have any plans to unlock it anytime soon. Throughout it all, Emily has been my staunchest ally. Every day she reminds me that family is about individuals who choose to love and support you without conditions, not just genetic ties. Together, we're concentrating on creating our future, and I know that I can handle any obstacles that may arise because she is at my side. Although hearing my mother's admission of my birth and her animosity toward me was upsetting, it was also somewhat freeing. At last, it clarified the pattern of conduct I had encountered throughout my life. Even though it doesn't always make the hurt go away, realizing why someone injured you might help you realize that their behavior was never motivated by your value as a person. I appreciate all of your help along the way, Reddit. When I was doubting myself, your messages and remarks kept me going. It really helped to know that I wasn't the only one who had to deal with familial favoritism. I would especially like to thank individuals who had similar experiences. Through this process, I may have lost some family members, but I have also acquired self-respect, clarity, and the bravery to put my own health first. That can occasionally be the best bequest we can have. My parents made me the other kid, while my sister became their golden child and destroyed my life. I can't make my update without it, so I'm reposting it. Except for this caption, nothing has changed. It's just as it was before the moderators of the entitled parents took it down. After reading a similar experience online, I felt compelled to share my own. I'm publishing this as my one and only Reddit post since I felt that sharing it might make me feel a little better. I've had some counseling, and discussing this topic in particular was quite beneficial. Why not just share it online as well, I reasoned. This year, I turned 18, and I recently moved out on my own, away from my parents. My sister is roughly 10 years my junior. She almost didn't make it to term because her pregnancy wasn't intended. Since I was never given much information, I don't know many specifics about how difficult my mother's second pregnancy was, but I do know that it was extremely taxing on her body, as my sister's birth prevented her from having any more children. That year, she spent a lot of time in and out of the hospital. My mother also nearly died during the birth. Because my younger sister might not have been born, it caused her and my father to get attached to her. With the exception of times when they needed a free babysitter, I felt like the other kid in the house ever since. My parents' long-term favoritism has led me to believe that they were truly insane for failing to recognize the precise harm it was causing to me. And now, starting with my 11th birthday, I'll describe how it's rebounding on them. My sister was 2 years old when she wept upon seeing a birthday cake that wasn't hers, therefore my parents asked me to let her blow out my candles. My parents had me do it even though I didn't want to. The moment felt totally wrecked, but they relit the candles so I could do it again later. The following year, the year after that, and so on, all experienced the same thing. They simply persisted in enforcing it until it was standard. My birthdays also had to include gifts for my sister. Hers never had any on mine. They simply said that I'm a boy and boys don't need to worry about it as much, when I questioned why. I understand that I was a child, but did they truly believe that what I said was wise? Not at all. Every time I had a birthday, my parents would pick a location that my sister preferred above mine. After a while, it seemed more like I had no birthdays while my sister had two. Beyond this, my sister became the center of my parents' entire existence. My sister had to agree with me if I wanted to do something. Otherwise, it was vetoed unless I could complete it by myself. Video games didn't seem to bother me there, until my sister wanted to come in and irritate me, so I learned to just lock myself in my room with them. That's why I locked the door. I was an irate teenager who was sick of being interrupted at any time, so when my parents asked me to take it off, I freaked out. My parents were mad at me for being nude in my own room, and my sister repeatedly ran in when I was naked. They retracted their objection and simply let me keep the lock after I pointed out how ridiculous it was. Because she was being pampered every day, my sister developed a princess complex. I avoided her as much as possible since she was highly demanding. I used every justification I could find to avoid dealing with her, even if it meant making things up, in order to have some alone time. I had more alone time once my parents hired a teenage girl to watch me. After my sister refused to listen to her, the babysitter quit, and my parents attempted to avoid paying her by saying she did a poor job. After the girl enlisted the help of others, my parents ultimately gave her the money she was due. After that, they recruited a second girl to watch the kids on a regular basis, and she stayed. I went out of my way to keep myself occupied with my part-time job whenever I could, but my parents still made it obvious that I was expected to care for my sister on any day I had free time. My sister gave me directions and treated me like her own butler. She would not quit using her ridiculous moniker for me. The mere mention of that moniker gets me furious. She would call our parents and cry if I didn't give her whatever she wanted, and I would then face consequences for mistreating her. This led to a lot of heated disputes between us, and once I refused to give in anymore, my relationship with my parents deteriorated to the point that we hardly spoke to each other for a while. However, they had the audacity to boast to other parents that they were the reason I put in so much effort during my high school graduation. Although they weren't incorrect, the explanation they were considering wasn't the one that actually occurred. I put a lot of effort into waiting to be free. However, my parents pretended to have accomplished a lot. Perhaps they did, prior to the birth of my sister. After that, though, it was all about her. Unless parent-teacher conferences were approaching, they didn't even inquire about my schooling. I received a B and C average when I graduated. Even though the trip was supposed to be for me, my sister always had more fun than I did when my parents took me there after I graduated. However, everything really came to a head in July, when I turned 18. Despite the fact that it was my 18th birthday, it didn't seem to be about me. I fervently hoped that, for once, we would be dining at my favorite restaurant. Instead, they had the celebration at Chuck E. Cheese, a local copycat. It became the go-to location for anything big because it was the only one like it in the area. Kids half my age were having their celebrations all around me. I had nothing to do but eat terrible pizza and play outdated arcade games and claw machines for tickets to insignificantly expensive prizes since I was so bored. My parents then produced a pink cake with white flowers on it when it was time for cake. It was clearly not a boy cake, even though it bore my name. There were only 10 candles, which was worse. In front of my sister, my parents blew out the candles and placed the cake. That's when it happened at last. I suddenly experienced a mental flashback of all the repressed annoyance. I then broke down in tears. I was crying in front of the entire family as an 18-year-old boy. Time appeared to stop because everyone was so shocked. All of the things I had been suppressing for the last 8 years just poured out like word vomit when I woke up. The whole family was able to see it. I went outside to sit beside the family car after I was finished. My parents kept the pink cake covered until it was served, so many relatives followed me to apologize and explain that they were unaware of it. The fact that they were unaware didn't matter, I said. For the past 8 years, Little Miss Sunshine had dominated my life while they all looked on. My celebrations and birthdays were all about her, so I didn't really have any of my own. Then, on the most important birthday of my life, they all expected me to simply nod and smile as usual while they gave my sister a cake that was specifically for her, even though it wasn't her birthday. Some of them began apologizing to me, but they gave explanations, claiming that they simply assumed I was fine with it since my parents had told me so. I informed them that I would never tolerate it. I just pretended to accept it after my parents made me do it every year. I instructed them to glance around as I spread my arms. Did this seem like the location I had in mind for my 18th birthday and graduation celebration? All this time, nobody even made an effort to defend me. My sister had it all, and I was just the other kid. My parents stopped allowing me to invite my friends long ago after they attempted to express their disapproval of my sister blowing out my candles, so I never even got to have them there. Was wanting a year that was about me and not her really that bad? There are 365 days in a year. Instead, because I want my own birthday, I'm treated like the entitled, avaricious brat that I am. I resumed my nasty crying. By then, my mother was sobbing too, so my father rushed outside to scold me for creating such a big spectacle. Everyone in the room now believes they are awful parents because I destroyed my sister's moment. I shouted back at him that he should understand why they are bad parents. The rest of the family surrounded him like a swarm of wolves when I said that. I had never seen anything like it before, but I guess it was better late than never. The majority of the throng rushed back inside with my father to argue with my mother after he was virtually backed up to the restaurant's front entrance. My grandparents stayed with me and expressed regret for spending so much time with their eyes closed. I'm not sure what was said to my parents in the restaurant, but they didn't return for around 30 minutes. They appeared completely defeated when they did. Both of my parents were unable to look me in the eyes, and my mother was still sniffling after sobbing so much. Both of them made clumsy excuses for their actions and promised to have the party somewhere else. However, the crowd didn't find it to be sufficient. My parents emphasized that they would never force me to let my sister blow out my candles again, give her gifts on my birthday, or make it about her in any way. One of my uncles cleared his throat pretty loudly. In addition to apologizing for bringing me a cake that was clearly not intended for me, there was another loud cough. They claimed they believed that at my age, cake was no longer a concern for me. Whoa, that was a terrible thing to say. I lost my temper again and screamed at them that it didn't matter how old I was. For years, they had given my sister my birthday without any justification, and they were aware of it. I informed them that since it was too late, there was no need in having the party again. They had made it quite evident that they didn't care about me. I brought up the fact that they had destroyed 8 years of my life before I reached adulthood. What birthdays with them would I be able to anticipate in the future? My father became upset with me for saying so, but he stopped talking after the whole family yelled at him. My grandfather informed him that I was entirely correct and that the harm could not be reversed. He claimed that ever since my sister was born, My parents were terrible individuals who took advantage of me and treated me like a black sheep. Furthermore, he claimed that they were all terrible because they simply allowed it to occur. He went on to say that I owed my life back, not just an apology. I resisted her attempts to approach me as she sobbed my name and apologized. But my mother broke down once more. She was body blocked from approaching half of the household. I just remarked that I was at my breaking point and turned to go. I was found and brought back by one of my aunts. I was so angry that I couldn't even be happy for any justice after all this time, even though I could hear several family members screaming and swearing at my parents over what had transpired. And throughout all of this, where was my sister? She was still eating cake and tearing apart gifts that were intended for me alone in the restaurant. In case anyone was curious, when I sobbed and left, my parents did offer her some cake. They were later called out on it, even though you would assume it wouldn't be their main concern right now. As everyone else left the party, my grandparents persuaded me to settle down and take a seat in their vintage minivan. When my sister was discovered to be opening my gifts, she pitched a fit. One of those gifts was a brand new smartphone, which she was not permitted to retain, so she hurled it against the wall and destroyed it. A few months prior, on her own birthday, she had received a brand new phone. In the end, I became so angry that I ranted about never wanting to have another birthday party. I was allowed to spend the night at my grandparents' place. I still hadn't spoken to my folks when I got home. My father remained as silent as I did, and my mother simply kept crying because I wouldn't talk to her. My grandparents persuaded me to join them for dinner the next weekend. I was shocked to discover a completely different party waiting for me when we arrived. Almost the whole time, my parents were there, grinning awkwardly and saying, "Don't hate us." A large chocolate cake with 18 candles and even a banner with my name on it was present. Since I didn't actually get to celebrate either this year, they dubbed it my happy belated birthday and graduation party. I had to act like I was delighted. 8 years of partiality cannot be reversed or even somewhat impacted by a one nice party. What happened to my sister? It wasn't all about her like it used to be, so she was sitting at the table with her arms folded and her lip twisted. The family sang me a modified version of Happy Day instead of Happy Birthday. My sister let out an ear-piercing scream as soon as I extinguished the candles. My parents, appearing more distressed than ever, had to take her out quickly and return her later. For the remainder of the celebration, she sulked in silence in her seat. My sister was punished for her actions at the last party by having her smartphone taken away, while I was still given a new one. However, there were other gifts besides the smartphone. My entire family helped out and bought me a car. Even though it was only an old white Volvo, I fell in love with it right away. My grandfather, who had some automotive knowledge, had fixed it himself. My sister was obviously not as delighted as I was. She threw a fit and demanded a car as well, letting out another one of those yells. It took some time for them to return outside after my mother had to take her to the restroom. My father simply returned to his dejected appearance. Their attempt to appear respectable in front of the entire family had been essentially wrecked by my sister. My sister was acting that way because my parents brought her up to be a pampered, entitled princess, according to several family members who also had harsh things to say about them. I immediately began driving the automobile around, but a few days later, my sister damaged it by smashing 2 side windows with a hammer and severely damaging the windshield, rendering the vehicle unusable. She screamed bloody murder as my parents grabbed her and removed the hammer, but they were able to stop her before she could do further harm. She even made an attempt to bite them. My grandfather had worked so hard on that car that everyone, especially my grandparents, was upset with my sister. It was destroyed by my sister's outburst. My sister was so indulged by my grandparents, they acknowledged, that she was unable to process the notion that I could have something that she was not able to. My sister was being raised to be an entitled brat by my parents, who were criticized by a number of other family members for setting her up for failure. They said that because my parents wouldn't enforce their rules and instill respect in her, my sister would have a horrible adult life. She was not unpunished for her acts. My sister was sent to boarding school at the beginning of the new school year after being grounded for the remainder of the summer. My father maintained that it was the only way to begin repairing the harm they had caused, despite my mother's tears. Yes, they admitted their mistakes wholeheartedly. Since no one took their side, it was difficult for them to hide it. At the boarding school, my sister is very miserable. She has been lying nearly non-stop and despises the rules and the outfits. But now that there are cameras everywhere, she can't get away with any of it. She yelled at our parents for placing her in that situation despite their repeated attempts to visit her. I've heard that she might live like this until she turns 18. My car's repairs were covered by my parents. The windshield and windows were replaced by an auto glass firm, and the vehicle now has the same appearance as before. My granddad approached me in August about a job possibility with a friend, but it was 40 minutes away. Unless I liked the lengthy journey, I would have to leave my parents' house. I was all for relocating. It was difficult for me to find my first flat. To get a studio, I had to have my credit card approved, but I was able to do it. Since September, I have been residing here. I don't talk to my parents very much, yet they keep trying to reach me. When we do speak, I always feel uncomfortable and uneasy. According to my grandfather, my parents are attempting to get in touch with me because they are unable to cope with their parental failures. He believes that in order for them to feel better about themselves, they want me to forgive them. However, I will not be forgiving them anytime soon. At last, I'm content and no longer with them. Now they have nothing. Not only do they lack my sister, they also lack me. The cost of my sister's boarding school, in addition to the party they held for me and the repairs they made to my car, forced my parents to work longer hours. All they have left is their job to concentrate on, an empty house, and irate relatives. Although I don't enjoy their suffering, it is ultimately the consequence of their own deeds. Edit. I want to express my gratitude to everyone who has given me awards. It holds great significance for me. Despite the fact that my piece was lengthy, I felt a great sense of relief after finishing it. In the comments, I saw some people accusing this post of being phony. I don't hold anything against you. If I were reading this, I would also be quite skeptical. I did, however, live it. That is the reality for some parents. People who had comparable or worse circumstances have even gotten in touch with me. Is it truly so strange that my parents behaved in this manner, given the abundance of horrible parents in the world? I come from a close-knit family where we stick together and do things as a group, so it may sound extreme for the entire family to rush back into the restaurant to confront my dad. At gatherings, it can quickly become the whole group versus one individual. I've witnessed it previously, such as when a cousin who was intoxicated was surrounded and taken away from a gathering to become sober. Although I really dislike collective mentalities, they were helpful in this situation. Words cannot express how ashamed my parents were of what they had done. They were unable to come up with a suitable explanation for their actions without coming across as even worse. They have essentially given up, acknowledging that they have no justification and are making a concerted effort to win my favor. I believe that a large portion of my relatives' assistance was motivated by shame, even though many of you are thanking them for it. With the exception of 2 years during COVID, the majority of them attended those 8 birthdays, but they kept quiet. When my sister blew out my candles, they may have given me a critical look, but they remained silent. Why? My grandfather, the patriarch of the family, is the father of my father. My grandfather can be rather frightening. He will assist you in whatever way he can if you're on his good side. The whole family despises you if you're on his bad side. That's a major factor in my distaste for group mentalities. My grandfather felt embarrassed when he remarked that the whole family was to blame for not supporting me throughout those years. They all contributed to the price of my vehicle. They didn't need to make a significant individual contribution because they had so many relatives. Even the receipt from the time I registered the vehicle in my name is with me. They paid $2,000 for it, plus additional money for tires and parts. My granddad adjusted the fluids and tuned it himself. The interior was thoroughly cleaned by my grandmother. Even though I'm incredibly grateful to each of them, I still wish to keep my distance. To figure things out on my own, I need time. It is likely that I will not see my parents again until Christmas or Thanksgiving. My sister has been likened by some to South Park's Eric Cartman, and it's a fairly accurate comparison. Because my parents gave her a lot of junk food, she is overweight. She despises eating anything nutritious. She once topped mashed potatoes with gummy bears, as I witnessed. I feel sick just thinking about that combination. She also spent a lot of time in the restroom as a result of her bad diet. In order to assist, my parents had to purchase fiber snacks, which I don't believe were inexpensive. My sister always believed she was in charge and is also very bossy. She was always giving me directions, so I would frequently lock myself in my room to avoid her. Because she was so domineering, she lost a lot of friends, but my parents assured her that the youngsters were envious of her uniqueness. When things didn't go her way, my sister would even call herself a princess and have big tantrums. Although I'm aware that she is more than a caricature, her actions definitely remind me of Eric Cartman. I am aware that my sister is also not a moron. She simply doesn't put out any effort and only received a C average in school. She would most likely receive straight A's as a student if she put in the necessary effort. Second edit. It appears that the subreddit has banned me. I'm not sure what I did, perhaps the post was too lengthy. In any case, I am no longer able to respond to comments, but I would want to thank everyone who left encouraging words. Thank you everyone from the bottom of my heart. Update. Here is what has transpired since my parents began celebrating my sister's birthday 8 years ago, for anyone who are curious. It has now been almost a year. I thought I was done here, so I didn't log in for a while. However, one day I decided to check in again and saw a ton of private messages requesting updates. The majority of what I'm going to share with you is based on what my parents and grandparents told me. I'm recounting what I discovered, so don't worry if it seems too bizarre. Yes, I'm doing great, but my parents and younger sister aren't doing so well. My sister made a number of attempts to leave boarding school after I last posted. She tried doing nothing, but it didn't help her. And none of her plots or falsehoods succeeded. She then tried going on a hunger strike, not eating anything until our parents arrived to get her up. My father prevented my mother from jumping into the automobile to save her baby, reminding her that they were to blame for my sister's actions. After fewer than 2 days of her hunger strike, my sister started to seek food in the cafeteria. Snacks and sweets were strictly prohibited at school unless they were nutritious. My parents had received a warning from a pediatrician that unless my sister's nutrition improved, she could develop diabetes in the future and possibly experience stunted growth. Gummy bears on mashed potatoes are out. My sister attempted to bully the other girls at the boarding school, of course, but they didn't put up with her bullshit. She got into a quarrel one day and was attacked by many girls who kicked her until a teacher intervened. My sister was scraped and bruised all over, but she wasn't terribly hurt. She blamed everyone else, of course, and said the other girls should follow her instructions. It should come as no surprise that her peers avoided her. She couldn't understand not getting her way, so she threw a fit. My sister was busted when my mother attempted to sneak junk food to her at the boarding school. My parents got into a heated argument as a result. Although my sister still craves junk food, my mother stopped smuggling it after being caught. My sister eventually turned to self-harm as her schemes became more complex in an attempt to influence her way out of the school. Unbeknownst to her, she stole a knife from the cafeteria and stood on a table, threatening to leave without chocolates. Candy indeed. She broke her left arm, her clavicle, and suffered a concussion when she slid and tumbled off the table during a chaotic time. Even the boarding school didn't want her back at that point. She was admitted to a children's mental health facility after leaving the hospital. She is currently receiving treatment for extreme narcissism, which my parents really encouraged. Unless my parents take her out, she is unable to leave the ward. There, she continues her education and follows a rigorous, healthful diet that she hates. It is personal agony for my sister. My father and I got into yet another heated argument when my mother sought to remove her from the ward. My mother took a bottle off the counter during the dispute and struck him with it, severely slashing his face and shattering his cheekbone. After the police were summoned, my mother was driven away in a police car and my father was brought to the hospital. After that, she spent several months in a mental health facility where she was compelled to face her enabling tendencies and trauma. I don't know the details, but from what I've learned, my mother's behavior is a result of unresolved issues from her own upbringing. My parents are now merely sleeping in different bedrooms, though there has been discussion of a divorce. Regarding myself, I recently turned 19. At a restaurant I enjoy, my grandparents hosted a celebration for me. Although my sister was temporarily permitted to leave the ward for the event, my parents and sister were present. She sat there looking at me like she hoped I would burn, her lip twisted. Because of her forced healthy diet, she had lost weight, but her resentment had not gone away. This time, she didn't scream as I extinguished my candles. Rather, she started sobbing uncontrollably while repeatedly asking why. It was merely another attempt at manipulation. Eventually, she pitched a fit, screaming that there was nothing. No pizza, no presents for her, no prizes. She then began to curse at our parents and made an attempt to leave the restaurant. She was clearly attempting to emulate my actions during my 18th birthday celebration, but it was just another example of her incapacity to acknowledge that not everything is about her. In a twisted manner, she was essentially attempting to replicate what I had done the previous year. I know my sister, even though you might think I'm overanalyzing this. She will take action if she believes it would help her achieve her goals. My grandfather spoke to my parents before they brought my sister home early after apologizing to everyone. My grandmother later provided me with some information. According to my grandfather, my parents had better not give in to my sister's requests or host her own party. He cautioned them that unless they permanently stopped supporting her, this conduct would never stop. After hearing this, my sister recognized that her outbursts were no longer effective. The following morning, she was driven back to the ward after being escorted out of the restaurant while kicking and crying. She is currently there. I'm not sure how long she'll be there. Even though she is only a child, she is the most obstinate person I have ever encountered. Until she reaches her lowest point, I don't think she will change. She's trapped in a situation that doesn't allow her to make demands until then. Not even my parents have attempted to hold me responsible for my sister's behavior during the previous 12 months. They've got to acknowledge that they brought her up to be a narcissist and that I had nothing to do with this. I've discovered that supporting a narcissist is a type of addiction. The only mental disorder my sister has been diagnosed with is narcissism, which she inherited from her upbringing. She has an IQ of about 110, which makes her somewhat smarter than me, but she only works hard when she receives a reward. She was conditioned to think that way, and I think it will take years to change. Regarding myself, I'm succeeding on my own. Although it's difficult, I've had to learn how to manage my finances and take care of myself, but it's still far better than living with my sister and parents. Edit. Someone pointed out that it doesn't make sense for my sister to be in a long-term facility for narcissism alone. It usually wouldn't, I agree. I'm being kept in the dark about any more diagnoses. I can sense that my parents aren't telling me everything, and since I'm not her parent, I can't just question the doctors. Nevertheless, when she doesn't get her way, my sister can be incredibly harmful to herself. It wasn't the only time she threatened herself at the boarding school with a knife. She has used similar threats to control my parents ever since she was admitted to the ward. For instance, she threatened to hurt herself if they didn't take her out for fast food after my 19th birthday. She frequently hits her head against the wall as a strategy. My mother didn't want to report this to the ward, but my father did. My sister has also made up claims of being harmed by doctors, but they never add together. Another element in her situation may be pathological lying, which is probably a major reason she is in a long-term facility. The cycle would repeat if my parents gave in to her demands once more if she were at home. I believe Little Miss Sunshine is relying on it. Third update. My knowledge of Little Miss Sunshine has increased. First of all, I acknowledge that I erred in some of my previous writings, including misrepresenting her age and other specifics. Anyone in my family who reads this would recognize me, even though I'm terrible at arithmetic and frequently try to hide facts to remain anonymous. To be clear, my sister blew out my birthday candles for the first time when she was 3 years old, and I was 8 when she was born. I was bitter as my parents began honoring her on my birthdays from the very beginning. By the time I turned 11, everything revolved around her, presents bearing her name, places she enjoyed, and her assisting me in unwrapping my gifts. Even if my parents acknowledged their mistakes, the years they stole from me still remain. Concerning the diagnosis of my sister, although a person cannot be officially diagnosed with narcissism until they are 18, my father acknowledged that she exhibits symptoms of potential NPD and other disorders. Due to the experiences she experienced as a youngster, my mother was also diagnosed with PTSD and another mental illness. Since my sister is their problem, not mine, my father advised me to overlook the fact that my parents have kept many details ambiguous. One of the most sensible things he has ever said to me is that the present condition of Little Miss Sunshine. She has no definite release date and is still in the ward. Although some of her anger has been tamed by therapy, she still feels entitled to all I own. She even demanded her own apartment during outbursts regarding mine. She has also continued to think that my birthday is hers. She was brought up that way, and my parents are solely to blame. They have requested me to keep quiet about the matter, stating that there is no assurance she will recover and that years of therapy will be necessary. In addition to taking medicine and attending treatment, my mother has become lethargic. She was temporarily committed for beating my father, but for some reason, she kept her job. Her employer let her to work from home for a lower salary. My viewpoint, since my actual birth date is eternally marred, I have made the decision to celebrate my birthday on the day of my belated celebration going forward. Returning to Reddit has caused me stress, even though I thought I was doing okay. My supervisor sent me home for the day because I'm so irritable and cynical. To deal with this, I'm thinking of looking for free counseling or local support groups. I am grateful to everyone who has read and comprehends my suffering. Although you have shown me kindness, I must concentrate on moving past my past. I may never come back here or respond to comments. Last edit, I discovered that I had committed math mistakes once more after reading my post again. My supervisor told me to take a sick day because I've been such a mess. Stress even made me throw up. Another post I came across showed parents chopping up their older child's personalized birthday cake for their golden child. This and other posts like it made me realize how many parents are just like me, changing only after embarrassment but remaining the same on a deep level. I'm cutting off communication with my parents and will talk to my grandparents about it more. I might not make another post here. I'd like to thank everyone who helped me. My sister got my wife fired, but karma struck when her $2.5 million fraud scheme was exposed, leading to her downfall. Thelma, 35F, My sister, who is 32, has always been fiercely competitive with everyone, particularly when it comes to professional accomplishments. Since she was a straight-A student who was accepted into a prominent college and immediately after graduation found a distinguished career, Thelma was always our parents' golden child. Thelma never forgot that I was a more typical student who took a few years to figure out what I wanted to do. Being the successful member of our family has become Thelma's entire identity. She is a senior manager at one of the leading IT businesses in our city. Her accomplishments are continuously praised by our parents, who also use her as an example for the rest of us to follow. She lives in a fancy home in the greatest area of town and earns a very decent living. Every family get-together becomes an opportunity to highlight her most recent bonus or promotion. 3 years ago, while both of us were speaking at a tech conference, I met my wife, Libby, 30F. Libby had the most amazing work ethic I had ever seen, and she was intelligent and motivated. She was from a very different family than ours. When she was 6 years old, her parents left Vietnam and took on several professions to support themselves. While maintaining stellar marks and eventually receiving her degree in computer technology, Libby had to work during high school and college to support her family. The thing that truly appealed to me about Libby was her humility in spite of her success. She never disparaged others or boasted about her achievements. Rather, she was constantly attempting to guide younger developers and make others successful. We bonded right away since we both enjoy coding and solving problems. And last year, after 2 years of dating, we were married in a modest ceremony. Thelma had never been fond of Libby. I initially assumed it was simply her customary aloofness toward strangers, but it soon became apparent that Thelma viewed Libby as a danger. Thelma would frequently make subtle jabs about how Libby was squandering her skills at a smaller company, despite the fact that she was leading the engineering department at her startup and producing creative work. That's cute, but at a real tech company like mine, or you should apply for a junior position at my company if you want to do actual important work, were some of the remarks she would make to break up Libby's employment stories. Our parents never mentioned Thelma's actions, and when I attempted to confront her about it, they blamed me of being overly sensitive and said that Thelma was only attempting to support Libby in her professional endeavors. Libby never took the bait or got into a fight with Thelma, and she always responded to her remarks with elegance. To Thelma's seeming annoyance, she would simply smile and shift the topic. When Libby received an amazing job offer from the same business where Thelma works, but in a different department, 6 months ago everything truly came to a head. Better income, more responsibility, and the opportunity to oversee significant initiatives that could significantly impact the industry made it Libby's ideal position. She would be in charge of financial technology integration across several divisions, which was Libby's area of expertise at her firm. Thelma usually dominated the conversation. So when we broke the news to her during a family dinner, she became extremely silent. Our parents were ecstatic, discussing how the sisters-in-law could get together for lunch and how wonderful it would be to have both of their daughters working for the same esteemed organization. Thelma merely shoved food around her plate and said something ambiguous about how hiring practices must be evolving. Libby was doing well when she started the job. She was already making strides toward simplifying some of their antiquated systems, and her team adored her. Every day, she would return home with excitement, sharing with me the difficulties she was facing and the advancements she was making. She was happier than I had ever seen her in her career. After only 2 weeks in her new position, Libby was abruptly called into HR and immediately let go. They said they had found that Libby had misrepresented her prior projects and employment experience on her resume. Libby was caught off guard. In her life, she had never told a lie. It didn't make sense because they had called all of her references and confirmed her prior job during the lengthy interview process. Libby was heartbroken. When she came home, she sobbed for hours, claiming she didn't comprehend what had transpired. HR refused to even look at her copies of all project material and employment records. Like criminals, they simply escorted her out of the building. I began looking into it since something didn't make sense. I requested a friend of mine who worked in IT at the company to investigate the situation because he owed me a favor. I was furious at what he found. Thelma had brought fake proof that Libby had forged some of her employment history to HR. In order to give the impression that Libby had misrepresented her position and accomplishments at her former employer, she had really produced fictitious emails and supporting paperwork. Thelma made no attempt to refute it when I challenged her about it. She stated that someone with Libby's past didn't belong at a prestigious company like theirs and that she was defending the company's brand. She blasted Libby for not being our kind of people, and expressed her frustration at seeing underqualified diversity candidates occupying unworthy positions. My sister's candid discussion of her preconceptions was something I had never heard her do before, and it sickened me. I expected our parents to be as appalled as I was when I told them everything. They said that rather than making a huge deal out of it, we should deal with it within the family. They stated that Thelma most likely didn't mean any damage and was simply anxious about her job. They advised Libby to simply look for new employment and move on, stating that there were many other organizations that would be better suited for someone with her experience. Karma caught up to Thelma last week. Her own supervisor found out that she had been fabricating reports to exaggerate the performance of her team. She was promptly fired. Now that she needs money to pay her mortgage and other payments until she gets a new job, she is frantically texting and calling me. It seems that she has already spent all of her savings on her opulent lifestyle. Our parents are placing a lot of pressure on me to do the right thing and help Thelma maintain her house because they believe that family comes first and that she's still your sister. They keep stressing that Thelma made a mistake but that she is family, while Libby is just an in-law. I declined. Just as she left Libby alone after purposefully ruining her career, I told Thelma she was on her own. Thelma broke down in tears and apologized profusely, claiming that I'd been cruel and that she had made a mistake. However, I don't think she genuinely feels regret for what she did to Libby. She merely apologizes for needing assistance after being exposed for her own deceptions. Even though my sister might lose her house, am I the jerk for not helping her? Although it's not as good as the job she lost, Libby has since obtained another one. However, I'm still upset over Thelma's actions. I don't think I can ever forgive someone who intentionally wounded my wife because of their own prejudices and anxieties, despite our parents' constant insistence that I'm being too harsh and that I need to forgive my family. Update. Since my last post, things have become a lot messier. Thelma decided to start what I can only characterize as a smear campaign against Libby across our entire extended family after I declined to assist her with her financial issues. She seems to be attempting to change the past such that she is the victim in this whole situation. Thelma brought a wholly made-up account of what happened to our extended family. In fact, she claimed that it was Libby who had been deceitful and manipulative. She falsely claimed that Libby had applied to her department on purpose. It was a whole other division, and had started attempting to appropriate Thelma's projects and claim credit for her work right away. Thelma stated that she had to notify HR of Libby's access to private documents pertaining to her team's projects in order to safeguard both the business and herself. She presented Libby as a corporate spy who had married me in order to gain access to Thelma's position inside the corporation. She even implied that, knowing that I was Thelma's brother, Libby had singled me out at the tech conference 3 years prior. In actuality, Libby was unaware of Thelma's existence until after we had been dating for a few months. The majority of our extended family seemed to be fully believing Thelma's falsehoods, which is the saddest part. Once a huge fan of Libby and a constant praise of her cuisine, our Aunt Linda now refuses to even look at her. Uncle Bob, who works in tech recruiting, even called me to warn me about how Libby might be using me to go up the corporate ladder. Our cousins have been making ambiguous remarks on social media about snakes in the family and gold diggers who destroy families. They have been phoning and emailing me nonstop, accusing me of betraying my own people for an outsider who attempted to destroy my sister's career. They don't seem to care that Thelma was fired for her own dishonesty. They have concluded that Libby must have planned that as retaliation as well. It's truly amazing the mental acrobatics they're employing to paint Thelma as the victim in all of this. My parents, who before at least seemed to be impartial, are now completely on Thelma's side. In fact, my mother had the audacity to tell me that she should have seen Libby was troubled from the moment she met her. Along with other blatantly racist remarks that sickened me, she said things like, people from her background often have different values about honesty. Go back to her own community where she wouldn't cause problems for our family, my dad advised Libby. Our youngest sister, Amy, 28F, is the only one who has defended Libby, and her revelation has altered my entire understanding of Thelma. At last, Amy broke down and shared with us a story that occurred 5 years ago. Shortly after graduating, she had applied for a junior job at Thelma's company. She aced every interview and had outstanding credentials. Her application was abruptly denied because of character issues, even though the team wanted to recruit her. Amy learned that Thelma had also gone to HR at the time with unfounded claims that Amy had cheated in college. It seems that Thelma had fabricated emails from Amy's college to bolster her allegations. Thelma had threatened to use her connections to blacklist Amy in the industry if she ever told anyone, so even though Amy was distraught, she kept silent about it. Amy was so disturbed by the incident that she ultimately accepted a job in a totally other industry. Thelma lost all control when Amy told her account in our family group chat and included screenshots of Thelma's threatening communications from that time. At 11 p.m., she stormed into Amy's flat, banging on the door and yelling that Amy was a traitor who was attempting to ruin her life. Amy claims she had no idea what secrets Thelma was referring to, but she was threatening to reveal all of her secrets. Additionally, Thelma promised to ensure Amy never again worked in the city. Amy had to call the police to get Thelma off the property because she was so scared. It's terrifying to hear my sister sound so insane after she captured a portion of Thelma's breakdown on her phone. Thelma was even more incensed after the cops warned her about harassment. Our family is now utterly divided. Our parents continue to support Thelma, claiming that Amy must have misinterpreted what transpired 5 years ago and that she is merely envious of Thelma's accomplishments. In an attempt to portray Amy and I as permanently jealous troublemakers, who are just out to harm poor, successful Thelma, they are accusing us of being disloyal and ungrateful for banding together against our sister when she is already down. They have even begun bringing up all of our childhood transgressions. I've begun compiling all of the proof of Thelma's behavior, including the police report from her breakdown, the testimonies from coworkers who saw her behavior, the phony emails she made about Libby, and the threatening text she sent to Amy. After reviewing everything, the legal staff at Libby's new workplace believes we have a solid case against Thelma and her old employer for defamation and wrongful termination. However, my parents are now threatening to disown Amy and me if we destroy our sister's life over a misunderstanding. They claim that if we don't drop everything and help Thelma get back on her feet, they will write us both out of their will and that pursuing legal action would demonstrate that we were never truly family. Since she doesn't feel safe in her own apartment, Amy is currently staying with us. Despite her own trauma from everything that has transpired, Libby has been a tremendous support system for her. Even though I'm more convinced than ever that confronting Thelma is the right thing to do, it still hurts to see my family fall apart like this. Numerous unpleasant facts about my family have come to light as a result of the entire scenario, which I suppose I always knew existed but never wanted to confront. I used to believe that Thelma's will to excel and her competitive nature were simply acts of ambition, but now I realize that they are a much more sinister and damaging trait. Update. Everything we believed to be true about Thelma's behavior has been totally disproved. Rachel, a former coworker of Thelma's, contacted Libby via LinkedIn last week. We were all surprised by what Rachel, Thelma's assistant manager for the previous 2 years, disclosed. Although it was undoubtedly a contributing factor, Rachel claims that Thelma's sabotage of Libby was motivated by more than just professional jealousy or prejudice. The true cause was much darker. Libby's new position would have provided her direct access to financial records and system logs, which may have revealed Thelma's years of falsifying the books, despite her best efforts to conceal her own illegal acts at the company. Documentation from Rachel demonstrated that since Thelma was promoted to senior manager, she had been routinely manipulating the performance metrics for her department. To make it appear as though her team was earning millions of dollars in fictitious revenue, she had set up shell businesses, faked contracts, and created phony client accounts. For years, she had been using these fictitious accounts to embezzle company revenue, taking a portion of the phony contracts and transferring it to her personal offshore accounts. Thelma went into a frenzy when Libby started working for the company and was given the responsibility of auditing and integrating all of the financial technology systems. Given her reputation for being meticulous and her experience with system integration, Libby would have unavoidably found out about Thelma's department's anomalies. Thelma fabricated the CV fraud narrative just 2 weeks into Libby's job, which is why she acted so swiftly to fire her. In reality, Rachel had been compiling proof of Thelma's deception for months, but because of Thelma's industry ties, she had been too afraid to come out. Rachel ultimately made the decision to take action after witnessing how Thelma had ruined Libby's career in order to defend herself. She had amassed records of strange money transfers, screenshots of phony client accounts, and copies of false contracts that all pointed directly to Thelma. We gave the police and the company's internal inquiry team all of this material. Thelma had embezzled more than $2.5 million in the previous 3 years, according to the probe. Her activities constituted securities fraud since the fictitious performance figures she disclosed had also affected the company's stock prices. However, the most heartbreaking discovery concerned our parents. When the detectives began tracking down the funds, they found that sizable sums had been going into accounts that belonged to our parents. They eventually acknowledged that they had been aware of Thelma's fraudulent conduct over the previous year after being presented with this evidence. Not only did they know, but they had been actively assisting her in concealing the funds. They had established offshore accounts and produced a paper trail that made the stolen money appear to be genuine investments by using their legal connections. They asserted that since Thelma was the one who stole the money, they had not technically committed any crimes and were only defending their daughter. I was disgusted by their attitude when I questioned them about their involvement in all of this. They said that because Libby claims to care so much about family, she should understand their actions. They even attempted to claim that Libby's assistance in paying her parents' tuition expenses was equivalent to helping Thelma steal millions of dollars. They didn't seem to see the difference between assisting to cover up enormous fraud and working honest jobs to support your family. Their attitude was the worst. They were just sorry they were found, not sorry for what they had done. In fact, according to my mother, none of this would have surfaced if Libby had been more understanding about her place and had discreetly departed the company when Thelma requested it. They continue to blame Libby for everything, claiming that her rigid job choices pushed them to take extreme steps. The involvement of our parents has upset Amy. She had always believed that our parents were simply too forgiving of Thelma and that she was the only toxic member of the family. Amy's entire opinion of our family has been completely destroyed by learning that they were complicit in her misdeeds. She can hardly sleep and has been experiencing anxiety episodes. Thelma is currently facing criminal charges from the firm for fraud and embezzlement. In addition, they are looking into a number of her close co-workers who may have participated in the plot. Although our parents are being investigated for their part in concealing the stolen funds, they have not yet been charged. Thelma is no longer there at all. She stopped answering all messages and cleaned out her home in the middle of the night. My parents say they don't know where Thelma might have gone, but the police are searching for her. I don't believe them at all, considering how they've previously assisted her. Third update. Our family has experienced pain as well as justice in this story's last chapter. 2 weeks ago, Thelma was apprehended for attempting to enter Canada using forged documents. Our parents, as we thought, had assisted her in hiding in several places during her attempt to escape the country. In order to escape a longer term, she ultimately accepted a plea bargain. In addition to 3 years of supervised release, she will spend 2 years in federal prison for embezzlement and securities fraud. Thelma's scam was far more extensive than we first believed, according to the company's inquiry. Since she was initially promoted to management 6 years ago, she had been stealing money and falsifying statistics. In order to hide her tracks, she had also been blackmailing a number of lower-level staff members, threatening to destroy their careers in the same way that she had done to Amy and Libby. All of this has been made possible by the tremendous assistance of Libby's new employer. Following the public revelation of Thelma's transgressions, Libby received a formal apology from her previous employer along with an offer to resume her job. They have given her a sizable payout for wrongful termination in addition to returning her to her previous position with a promotion and full back pay. More significantly, they are putting new rules into place to stop discrimination against workers from immigrant backgrounds and HR fraud. Our parents are dealing with the fallout on their own. Their cooperation with investigators helped them avoid criminal charges, but their role in Thelma's crimes is now well known in our town. Since the partners didn't want to run the risk of their reputation being damaged by association, they were compelled to leave their legal practice. They no longer hold the same position in all of the social circles they once controlled, and the majority of their pals have turned away. Rather than expressing regret, they have intensified their efforts to place the blame on others. Before Thelma was sentenced, they even attempted to write a letter to the judge accusing Libby of manipulating circumstances to accuse Thelma out of jealousy. Given the strong proof of Thelma's culpability, the judge was not impressed. Additionally, they attempted to accuse Amy and I of plotting with Libby to embezzle Thelma's money and blame her, but this desperate attempt clearly failed. Amy has begun to put her life back together. While she searches for a new job away from our parents' influence, she has temporarily moved in with us. The business has also extended an offer to her, admitting that Thelma's bogus accusations were the reason behind her dismissal 5 years prior. After years of Thelma's manipulation and our parents' toxic behavior, she is finally receiving therapy. Her gradual recovery of confidence and realization that none of this was her fault is truly remarkable. Libby and I have stopped communicating with my parents and Thelma altogether. Our lawyer has made it plain that any attempt to get in touch with us will be viewed as harassment, and we have blocked them everywhere. Building our own family with individuals who share our values of integrity and support for one another is our main goal. After seeing all the proof, a number of our cousins who at first thought Thelma was lying have apologized, and we're carefully mending our ties with those who appear to be truly sorry. Some family members continue to maintain that we ought to have kept matters within the family and protected Thelma. Last week, my aunt called and said that we are bad people for allowing Thelma to go to prison and that real families stick together no matter what. However, Thelma's total lack of regret, even in court, has only served to reinforce our decision. She merely expressed regret for trusting the wrong people, specifically Amy and Libby, to reveal her wrongdoings. We have learned from this entire experience that sometimes the family you choose matters more than the family you are born into. Instead of the poisonous allegiance and corruption that Thelma and our parents attempted to impose on us, Libby, Amy and I are forging a new sort of family founded on integrity, respect and genuine support. I found out my parents funded my sister's secret family for years while ignoring my son's medical bills, leading to his death. I never thought I'd write this, but my family's tragedy has utterly ruined me. It tells the story of how my sister and dad betrayed me, causing my 2-year-old son to die. There were 4 of us growing up: my mom, 58F, a math teacher at the local high school; my older sister Sarah, 35F; my dad, 60M, a senior insurance agent at a large firm; and myself, 28F. We appeared to have a lovely life and lived in a nice area, but there was always one major issue: my parents' intense preference for Sarah. Favoritism began at a very young age. Sarah had ballet classes, painting lessons, and piano lessons throughout elementary school. My parents told me we couldn't afford 2 kids participating in extracurricular activities when I begged to join any. While I wore her hand-me-downs, Sarah purchased new clothes from the mall. I used her old phones till they broke, but she always acquired the newest iPhone models. Sarah requested braces at the age of 13. Without hesitation, my parents paid $6,000. When my dentist informed me a year later that I also required braces, they indicated we would have to wait due to financial difficulties. I still have crooked teeth at the age of 28, and I never got them. Sarah received a brand new Honda Civic for her 16th birthday. They advised me to work and save money for a car of my own when I became 16. I only bought a used Toyota that broke down after 6 months of working at McDonald's after school for 2 years. All the way through high school, the trend persisted. While I had to work part-time jobs to pay for necessities like clothes and school supplies, Sarah was free to concentrate only on her education and enjoyable hobbies. When it came time for college, I had to start at a community institution, but Sarah attended a pricey elite university. My parents covered all of her costs, including a condo close to her college and a semester abroad in Paris. To pay for my textbooks and bus fare to school, I worked 2 jobs, one as a campus library assistant and another at a coffee shop. After transferring to State University, I was in my 3rd year when I met my spouse, James, 30M. He worked part-time at the college IT department while pursuing an engineering degree. I felt like someone actually cared about me for the first time when we started dating. James was also from a middle-class family, but when he was in high school, his parents died in a car accident. He worked hard to pay for college while living with his aunt during high school. Before we were married, we dated for 3 years. We were saving money for a down payment on a house, so I planned a little courthouse wedding, but James felt that since it was a once-in-a-lifetime event, I should have a genuine wedding. We organized a little ceremony for perhaps 50 people in a nearby church. Sarah said she had an important work meeting, therefore she didn't arrive. Sarah had arranged a family vacation for that weekend, so my parents nearly skipped it as well. When my mom's sister confronted them about it, they abruptly changed their plans. Tommy was born to me 2 years after we were married. With terrible morning sickness and gestational diabetes, the pregnancy was difficult from the beginning. The worst news arrived in 32 weeks. Doctors discovered Tommy's significant cardiac issue during a routine scan. They stated that beginning immediately after delivery, he would require multiple procedures over the course of his life. Despite our grief, James and I were committed to doing everything in our power to ensure our son's health. The day following Tommy's birth, his first surgery was performed. Although the majority of the $150,000 was covered by insurance, we still had to pay $30,000 out of pocket. We took out loans and spent all of our savings. James began putting in extra hours at his engineering job and taking on weekend freelancing work. I was caring for Tommy while working from home as a virtual assistant. Tommy had to have another operation 6 months later. I turned to my parents for assistance because we were already having trouble paying for the initial operation. They had just returned from a Mediterranean cruise with Sarah that lasted 2 weeks. I stated to them that we had previously sold our car and made every feasible cut while displaying all of our medical expenses. They claimed they couldn't help since they were facing financial difficulties. I didn't know the truth, so I trusted them. We barely made it for the following year and a half. James put in 80-hour weeks until he became so worn out that he passed out on the job. I started taking on additional virtual assistant jobs and began using eBay to sell items from our home. During this period, my parents took 3 family holidays with Sarah and gave her a brand new Mercedes for her birthday. They said that because Sarah worked well in finance, she was responsible for paying for all of these. This turned out to be a lie. Tommy deteriorated significantly last month. His heart suddenly stopped working correctly, necessitating emergency surgery that would have cost $50,000. We didn't have a method to get that much money fast, and our insurance had hit its annual cap. I begged my parents for assistance once more, this time down on my knees. I offered to sign a formal agreement promising to give them our house, double the money they owed, and anything else they desired. They declined once more, stating that recent medical expenses had depleted their savings. We were unable to pay for Tommy's surgery, therefore he passed away 2 days later. He had just turned 2. My parents claimed they had to assist Sarah with an urgent matter, so they barely stayed for 30 minutes at his burial. While tidying Tommy's room yesterday, I discovered my dad's old phone beneath the bed. He must have lost it when he was there 3 weeks prior. I checked the phone, which was still functional, and discovered hundreds of texts between Sarah and my parents. I learned the truth in this way, and it ruined what remained of our family. Sarah had been leading an entirely different life, one that none of us were aware of, according to the texts. She had 3 children in Florida with a man named Mark after 7 years of marriage. All this time my parents had been providing for them financially by giving them large sums of money each month. I read through all of the messages for 5 hours. My parents send Sarah $5,000 a month to cover everyday expenditures. Each of her 3 children attended a private school that they paid $2,000 a month for. They provided coverage for their family's trips to Hawaii and Europe. They spent $400,000 last year on a Hamptons vacation home. My parents even covered the cost of their weekly lawn care and house cleaning service. The most recent correspondence concerned Sarah's desire to purchase a beach property. My parents sent Sarah $75,000 for the down payment 5 days before telling me they couldn't save Tommy. Additionally, there were notes about the 3 new iPads and game consoles they had already purchased for Sarah's children as Christmas gifts. The gifts that each child received exceeded the expense of Tommy's surgery. Our monthly family dinner was held today. Every month on the last Sunday, my aunts, uncles, and cousins all gather at my parents' house. In an effort to keep the family close, my mom established this custom 5 years ago. Typically, about 25 individuals show there. Sarah consistently excused herself from these dinners by citing work obligations. I now know that she was in Florida with her clandestine family. I went to supper with my dad's phone. I used screen mirroring to link the phone to the TV after everyone had finished eating and gone to the living room for coffee. I displayed the financial transfers, the communications, and the pictures of Sarah's covert existence to everyone. I told her how my parents refused to help save their dying grandchild, but had paid her $75,000 for a beach house. My mother began to cry and reached out to give me a hug. I stepped back from her. Sitting there, my dad gazed at the floor. With a sneer on her lips, Sarah, who had actually attended this meal for the first time in years, simply sat on the couch. She informed everyone that I was being dramatic as usual and that they should realize that she had 3 children to support and so needed the money more. I questioned her about if Tommy's life was more important than her children. I was crazy for drawing similarities, she said. My mother made an effort to clarify that Sarah was their top priority as she had always required more assistance and had been more emotionally sensitive. My dad went on to say that they assisted Sarah because she lacked my strength and independence. My Aunt Susan questioned them about how they could afford to spend thousands on Sarah's beach mansion and still allow their grandson to die. My parents couldn't respond. Other family members began inquiring about the several occasions my parents and Sarah had taken out loans from them under the pretext of crises. Sarah became irate and said that I had no right to reveal her personal information. She claimed that if anyone learned about this circumstance, her children would suffer from trauma. I informed them that they were no longer my family. In order to purchase a beach property for Sarah, they witnessed the death of my son. I told them that their decisions had killed them, just as Tommy had died. Sarah began to yell that I was jealously attempting to ruin her life. She claimed that because our parents loved her more, I had always envied her. I banned their numbers after leaving their home. I was followed by several family members who promised to help me if I decided to file a lawsuit. Sarah and my parents have been blocked on social media by the majority of my cousins, but some relatives are emailing me to say that I went too far by disclosing Sarah's secret in public. They believe I ought to have dealt with it in private. James agrees with my decision to stop communicating with them, but he believes there was a better way for me to reveal the truth. I don't care anymore, but he is concerned about how this may impact our ties with our extended family. Instead of protecting their grandson's life, my parents decided to fund Sarah's opulent lifestyle, which is why my son is dead. Update. Since I revealed Sarah and my parents during the family dinner, a lot has transpired. Over the years, more relatives have come forward with tales of my parents' deceit and Sarah's manipulation. I'm more and more aware of their deceit with every new story. 3 days after the dinner, I received a call from my Aunt Linda. She sobbed as she informed me about last year's $30,000 loan to Sarah. According to Sarah, her oldest kid developed appendicitis and required emergency surgery. Because she didn't want another child to go through what Tommy had gone through, Linda spent all of her retirement funds to assist. Later, Linda learned that there was no operation. Sarah installed a pool and updated the kitchen at her beach house using the funds. The story of my cousin Emily was even worse. She visited my home last week and told me something that made me feel nauseous. Emily was engaged to Mark, Sarah's husband, 8 years prior. After graduating from college, Emily and Mark became engaged. They sent out invites, organized a lavish wedding, and Emily even purchased her own gown. Mark went missing 2 weeks prior to the wedding. He wrote a note stating that he wasn't prepared to get married. After having a breakdown, Emily required 2 years of therapy. She is aware of the reality now. While Mark was engaged to Emily, Sarah had been seeing him in secret for months. He was persuaded by Sarah to abandon Emily and follow her to Florida. My parents were well informed. They assisted Sarah and Mark in choosing their Florida home. 3 months after Mark's separation from Emily, they even went to their small, secret wedding. They were aware of Sarah's actions and watched Emily battle sadness the entire time. 2 more stories were then released. I was discovered on Facebook by Tom, Sarah's first husband. Sarah's previous marriage to Mark was unknown to me. Soon after graduating from college, Tom and Sarah were married and had a daughter. Sarah emptied their bank accounts and vanished when their daughter was 2 years old. She seized all of Tom's inheritance from his grandmother, along with $40,000 from their savings. Sarah informed everyone that she had to leave because Tom was abusive. Sarah's falsehoods cost Tom his job, his home, and almost their daughter's custody. In order to obtain child support for their now 15-year-old daughter, he had been looking for Sarah for years. Sarah's whereabouts were always known to my parents. They assisted Sarah in creating fictitious documents demonstrating that she was in danger from Tom and paid attorneys to contest Tom's custody claims. Everything became worse when James discovered something in our safe deposit box last week. Like they said they did for all their grandchildren, my parents set up a trust fund for Tommy when he was born. They committed to investing $1,000 each month until he became 18. There should have been more than $100,000 in the trust. We discovered records that demonstrated they had been moving all of the funds to Sarah's children's accounts. James continued searching through our documents and discovered further proof of their dishonesty. My parents were retired and on fixed incomes, so each time we filed for financial aid for Tommy's medical bills, they wrote letters to the hospital stating that they were unable to assist. However, their bank records reveal that they were simultaneously sending Sarah sizable sums. I was contacted over LinkedIn by my dad's secretary. According to her, my dad had been assisting Sarah with corporate funds, classifying the transfers as business costs. In order to demonstrate that Sarah was a business consultant for his insurance company, he fabricated paperwork. According to the secretary, he had sent more than $200,000 in business funds to Sarah throughout the previous 3 years. According to my mom's best friend, who also works at the same school, my mom has been embezzling money from the school's fundraising accounts in order to give it to Sarah. She changed the records to hide it. Each year, the school generated funds for the medical emergencies of its students. This fund was overseen by my mother, who also had access to every account. Since I blocked Sarah, she has been attempting to reach me from several phone numbers. She occasionally threatens to sue me for violation of privacy and defamation. At other times, she calls in tears and says that Mark is questioning her about her history and she wants my assistance. She said in her voicemail yesterday that if I didn't stop anyone from looking into her finances, she would tell everyone that I had abused Tommy. Yesterday, my parents issued a letter via their attorney. They said that if I agreed not to sue them, they would create a new trust fund for my future children. To demonstrate their good faith, they promised to contribute $200,000 right away. They also wanted me to sign a non-disclosure agreement in the letter, which said that I would never speak about Sarah's life or how they helped to sustain her financially. A number of family members have severed all communication with Sarah and my parents. After learning of what transpired, my dad's golfing pals have ceased inviting him to their weekly events. The other members of my mom's book club, who were primarily the parents of her students, no longer wanted to get out with her, so she had to dissolve it. The most challenging aspect is that pictures of Sarah's family traveling to upscale locations while Tommy was ill kept turning up. The same week that we were pleading with my parents to contribute to Tommy's last surgery, someone discovered photos of Sarah's family at Disney World. The matching outfits Sarah's children are wearing in the pictures cost more than what we had to buy to save my son's life. Second update. Our attorney discovered something that clarifies a lot of my parents' actions, particularly their strong preference for Sarah. Sarah is not their biological daughter, as we found out. At the age of 2, she was adopted. They didn't tell anyone, not even Sarah. While our lawyer was looking into the missing trust fund funds, the adoption documents surfaced. Sarah was adopted by my parents following my mother's 4 miscarriages. Because they were concerned that it would impact Sarah's feeling of family, they chose to keep the adoption a secret. Not even our grandparents were informed. In order to avoid being questioned about the unexpected arrival of a 2-year-old, they relocated to a different city immediately following the adoption. The attorney also discovered proof that my parents had assisted Sarah in her scam throughout the years. My parents hired someone $155,000 to fabricate transcripts indicating Sarah graduated with honors after she left college after 2 years. They had a business associate of my dad write fictitious work references for her. Sarah never worked anyplace. All of the jobs she claimed to have had throughout the years were fictitious. In order to obtain credit cards and loans, my parents assisted her in fabricating an identity. They obtained phony papers by using my dad's contacts at the insurance firm. Sarah obtained moreover $300,000 in loans from various banks using this fictitious name. My dad's business provided the funds that my parents used to make the payments. Sarah lost all control when our lawyer informed her about the adoption. She posted all of this on Facebook. She disclosed how my parents assisted her in stealing Emily's fiancé, hiding from her first husband, and concealing her credit card theft. She even acknowledged that she had made false claims regarding the abuse of her first spouse. Sarah shared images of text exchanges that demonstrated how my parents assisted her in fabricating a medical emergency so she could get family members to lend her money. She had a routine. She would choose a financially secure relative, fabricate a narrative about one of her children requiring medical care, and have my parents verify her account. In this way, they conned at least 7 different relatives. At last, my parents sobbed and told our lawyer everything. They have supported Sarah and her family with over $500,000 over the last 10 years. They borrowed funds from their retirement accounts, took out second and third mortgages on their home, and my dad even embezzled from the client accounts of his business. I was even more incensed by their response when the lawyer questioned them about why they chose to let Tommy die rather than assist us. They said that if they stopped providing Sarah money, they would be cut off from their grandkids. According to my dad, if the kids ever stopped supporting Sarah's lifestyle, she had threatened to vanish with them. My mother acknowledged that she was aware of Sarah's scheme to take Mark away from Emily. She claimed that Sarah had confided in her that she would stop at nothing to win Mark's affection. Rather than intervening, my mother assisted Sarah in setting up private sessions with Mark. Even the note that Mark left for Emily was written with her assistance. Our lawyer now works with Tom, Sarah's first husband. He has evidence that my parents assisted Sarah in fabricating accusations of domestic abuse against him. To fabricate medical records indicating injuries, they hired a physician. With the aid of these documents, Sarah was able to get restraining orders against Tom, which barred him from visiting his daughter for several years. When my dad's business learned about the stolen funds, an internal investigation was launched. He had been fabricating insurance policies and keeping the premiums, they found out. He used the funds to support Sarah and created policies for non-existent people. He was dismissed by the corporation and is facing criminal prosecution. Concerned about being linked to my dad's scam, a number of his business associates have severed their connections with him. After parents protested that their children were being taught by someone involved in fraud, my mother was forced to leave teaching early. Additionally, the school is looking into the disappearance of dollars from student activities funds. In order to cover their legal expenses, my parents had to sell their home. They could be charged with fraud, embezzlement, and aiding in the creation of fraudulent documents. For making fictitious police reports about her first husband, identity theft, and financial fraud, Sarah is under investigation. Update 3. Over the last 6 months, everything with my family has dramatically changed. In order to settle their legal debts, my parents had to sell their home and the majority of their belongings. They currently reside on the opposite side of town in a little 1-bedroom apartment. My dad needs to repay $400,000 that he took from customer accounts after his company won their lawsuit against him. Unfortunately, no insurance firm will hire him, so he is now working as a night security guard. After Mark learned about Sarah's first marriage and all of her falsehoods, her life completely collapsed. Even more information about her past was discovered by the private investigator he hired. Prior to her first marriage, Sarah had another child from a previous relationship. She never mentioned this child to anyone and relinquished her parental rights. The fact that she had left 2 children behind before becoming his wife and father repulsed Mark. Mark obtained full custody of their 3 children after filing for divorce. The judge concurred that Sarah's past of deception and desertion made her an unfit mother. She is not even permitted to visit the kids unattended. Mark and the children returned to their hometown in Texas. He had to obtain a restraining order since Sarah kept creating fresh social media profiles to reach him. Tom, Sarah's first husband, won his appeal for retroactive child support. Sarah was ordered by the court to give him $150,000 plus interest for the years she was missing. They are seizing the meager fortune she received from our grandma last year since she's unemployed and unemployed. Now 15, Tom's daughter won't talk to Sarah or my parents after finding out that they assisted in keeping her from her father. Because of the stolen fiancé event, my cousin Emily sued Sarah in civil court for mental anguish. Sarah and my parents planned the entire thing months in advance, according to old emails that Emily's lawyer discovered. Because Mark's family was wealthy, they specifically targeted him. Last month, the matter was resolved out of court, but as a condition of the deal, Sarah had to give Emily her beach house. James received an offer of employment in Colorado that had complete medical benefits and higher wages. To start over, we made the decision to relocate. We're keeping it quiet this time, but I'm 4 months pregnant. The only people who are aware of the pregnancy are my Aunt Linda and 2 cousins. We've made the decision to stop communicating with Sarah and my parents. Some family members are still attempting to persuade me to pardon my parents. They claim that my parents have learned their lesson and lost everything. I am constantly getting letters from Uncle Bob about how my parents miss us and cry during family get-togethers. However, I informed him that I don't care about their tears because their decisions caused my son to lose out on his entire life. Last week, Sarah was arrested for attempting to use her children's social security information to apply for new credit cards. She is being charged with identity theft. When she was in jail, she called me to seek assistance with bail money. I banned the phone number of the jail. The only positive outcome of this circumstance is the increased closeness of other family members. In Colorado, my Aunt Linda moved close to us to assist with the impending baby. My cousins have established a group chat where we encourage one another and communicate every day. Without Sarah and my parents, we are starting a new family. Every day I still miss Tommy. We talk about him a lot, and his photos are everywhere in our new home. However, I'm happy that my parents and Sarah's truth was revealed. At least they are no longer able to harm others with their falsehoods. Among all of this, the most difficult lesson I took away was that sometimes the people who ought to love you the most are the ones who hurt you the most. However, right now, my attention is on the future and creating a better life with the family members that genuinely care about us. I departed to start my own business in spite of my parents' opposition. They then tried to take my money and filed a lawsuit against me. I was never liked by my parents. They went to the same college and were infatuated in high school. When my mother found out she was pregnant while still in college, their ambitious intentions to tour the world and see other cultures were dashed. Although they thought about ending the pregnancy, their parents forbade it. My mother eventually left college and moved in with her parents because she was unable to cope with the criticism and rumors from other people. I entered the world in this manner. My grandparents loved me, but my mother hated me. My mother never spent time with me, so for a long time I thought she was my sister and my grandparents were my parents. When I tried to get her attention, she would either yell at me or ignore me. I was unaware of my father's existence because he was not present. During this period, my parents kept dating. I know they didn't want a kid, but I didn't understand why they detested me as a kid. Both of my grandparents were friendly to me, spent time with me, and watched after me. By the time of my father's college graduation, I was beginning to walk and speak. He started coming to see me every weekend because he felt bad about not being more active in my life. I assumed he was merely my grandparents' buddy. My grandparents urged him to get to know me, but my mother detested it when he spent time with me and insisted that he ignore me. That's how I found out he was my dad. He moved in with my mother after proposing to her when he acquired a job. My mother was fiercely opposed to my father's desire for me to live with them so they could care for me. As they became older, my grandparents wanted my parents to assume the role. I moved in with my parents when I was 5 years old after they reluctantly took me in. It would be an understatement to say that I detested living with my parents. It seemed as though darkness had taken the place of the light in my existence. My mother threatened to expel me if I did anything wrong and was always reminding me to be thankful that I was still living with them. My dad arrived home late at night after working all day. He insisted that I go to bed since he couldn't handle me that day and that he needed time alone whenever I wanted to spend time with him. My grandparents used to love me, but now I live with parents who hate me. I knew I wasn't wanted, but I didn't know why. Unlike other children, I never received toys or treats from my parents. On occasion, I would arrive at school with unfinished assignments, and my instructor would call my mother to yell at me for being indolent and to accept responsibility. Because I was so afraid of her, I began to meticulously complete my assignments in the hopes that one day she would accept me. However, she never did. My father continued to live in his own universe, unconcerned with my everyday activities or academic achievement. As I became older, I realized the true feelings my parents had for me. I observed that they regarded me differently than other children. I observed other parents embracing, kissing, and grinning as they dropped off their kids. None of that ever happened to me. I had the impression that I was living with strangers. I began to wonder if I was actually their biological child as a result. I asked my grandparents every time I went to see them, and they confirmed that I was their child. They clarified that my parents simply required more time to grow up. My mother, on the other hand, never sat down to say anything nasty. If I were in high school with you, I would have bullied you mercilessly. It was strange to hear my mother make fun of my hair, glasses, and weight. My mother refused to acknowledge that I had a milk allergy, even though my grandparents were well aware of it. She made me drink milk one day, saying that children in her era didn't have allergies and that I was pretending to have one to be cool. I ended up in the hospital as a result of a serious allergic reaction. She was shaken by the situation, particularly when the police arrived to speak with her. She never gave me milk again after that. She sobbed when my dad yelled at her as well. My recuperation was filled with conversation as my grandparents hurried to the hospital to be with me. My parents' attitude toward me changed after this episode. In the evenings, my dad would spend time with me and put me to bed, and my mother began getting me up for school and helping me get ready. They started treating me like a human being. I'm not sure what happened. Seeing my dad invite me to watch football games with him or my mom inquire about school was odd but enjoyable. I started to know my parents better in this way. Since I didn't harbor any animosity toward them, I believe I was born with a great deal of empathy. One of my favorite memories of the three of us is going to the beach on the weekends. My parents began to show me some love, and I stopped feeling envious of the children in my class. My mom's mother, my grandma, taught me how to crochet, and when I became 15, I realized I had a knack for it. By this point, my grandfather was dead, and my grandma made a few $100s a year selling her lovely handmade crocheted items at the local craft market. I was captivated by the elaborate designs and vivid hues she employed, and I eagerly took in every aspect of her work. I developed a strong desire for making one-of-a-kind and customized goods as I spent more time developing my crocheting abilities under her tutelage. I made the decision to attempt selling my own crocheted goods after being inspired by my grandmother's attitude of entrepreneurship. At the same neighborhood craft market where she displayed her artwork, I set up a tiny stand with her encouragement. The enormous amount of feedback made me understand that I could make money from my interest. As soon as the word got out about my talent, students, acquaintances, and even locals began placing special orders. Customers were intrigued to the idea of owning something handmade and one-of-a-kind, and each piece I created conveyed a story. My abilities and inventiveness expanded along with my modest business. In order to stretch the limits of conventional crochet, I started experimenting with other yarn textures, colors, and patterns. From basic blankets and scarves to elaborate wearables and home decor pieces, my creations have grown throughout time. My resolve to further hone my skill was strengthened by the encouraging comments and recurring business. My grandma advised me to open a savings account in order to better manage my money when I began to make a sizable income. She suggested that I put my salary aside for college. My parents were shocked to learn how much I had been making, and their eyes widened when I told them. They considered crocheting to be a pointless pastime till that point. They really objected when they saw that I was earning a substantial sum of money for my age. My mother forbade me from going to my grandmother's house, and my father threatened to burn all of my crocheted items, claiming he wasn't working hard to pay for my school so I could waste time on stupid things. When I told them that the money I had earned was with my grandma, they called her and began to shout at me. Despite my parents' insistence that they should have every penny, my grandma refused to give them anything when she discovered they were attempting to steal my money. This helped me realize that my parents were still as self-centered and self-serving as ever, despite the passage of time. I was determined not to lose the money that might be used to pay for my college education, and I couldn't give up my love of crocheting. My parents' actions made me question whether they would even pay for my college education, so I decided to take matters into my own hands. I made a plan to spend every weekend working on my designs at my grandmother's house. My best buddy, who was aware of the situation and encouraged me, was the one I lied to when I told my parents that I was staying at their house. We collaborated to complete the pouring orders from customers at my grandmother's residence. My grandmother was essential to the development of my company. In order to reach a wider audience, I also embraced online channels like Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. Social media has become an effective tool for interacting with other artists and exhibiting my work. The digital world gave me countless opportunities to share my enthusiasm with people throughout the world. My little stand at the neighborhood craft show grew into a successful internet business over time. As a co-owner, my grandmother assisted me in opening a bank account with her. I had entire faith in her, and because of her, I was able to put all of my money aside for college. When my own parents merely wanted to keep my money for themselves, she had faith in me. My mother once looked through my phone without my knowledge and found out that I had an internet company. We got into a heated argument once she discovered that I was still running it behind their backs. My grandmother and I were both yelled at by my parents. They claimed to have raised and taken care of me all my life, and demanded that I take all of the money I had made and give it to them. I almost cried as I tried to clarify that I wasn't hurting anyone and that the money was for my college. My father shouted that he could no longer trust me since I had cheated on them. Standing behind me, my mother insisted that I remove my Instagram page. Instead, I shrewdly canceled my account, intending to restart it after I was no longer under parental control. Then, starting at 9 a.m., they imposed stringent phone limitations. Until 4 p.m. and 12 a.m. until 8 in the morning. Additionally, they began following my whereabouts and looking through my online history, sending me alerts if I looked up anything they thought was inappropriate. Even harmless things like buying underwear. My parents would phone me and my friends several times if I didn't return home right away after going out with them, something I was only permitted to do twice a week. They forbade me from crocheting with my grandmother, although occasionally I was permitted to spend a few hours with her after school. They threatened to disconnect my phone and internet if I didn't comply. Even though I was just 16 and had no means of escape, there were plenty of days when I just wanted to flee. My parents agreed to let me work part-time at a nearby cafe in exchange for a quarter of my profits. Without protest, I gave them their weekly allotment and sent my grandmother the remaining 75% to be deposited into my bank account. My parents persisted in making my life miserable by frequently entering my room at strange hours to check on me, reading through my emails and chats, and keeping tabs on where I was. I was grounded or made to give them a larger portion of my wages if I disobeyed their regulations. Knowing that getting into a reputable college was my ticket to leaving this existence behind, I concentrated on doing well in school in spite of everything. I put in a lot of work. I packed everything I had purchased for myself the night before my 17th birthday, leaving behind things my parents had given me, like my phone. To be sure they couldn't follow me or discover any details about my plans, I cleared my phone. I was finally able to move in with my grandmother when she came to take me up early in the morning. When my parents saw me go, they became irate and began fighting with my grandmother, threatening to call the police. Since I was now 17 and could make my own decisions, I told them to go ahead. They threatened to tell everyone that I was an unappreciative daughter in an attempt to blackmail me, but I didn't care. Additionally, they threatened to stop providing any financial aid for college, but I grinned since I knew I had saved enough money to qualify for a scholarship. I experienced a mixture of anxiety, relief, and resolve as I left the house. I had no idea that my path would soon take a surprising detour. It was refreshing to spend the first few weeks at my grandmother's house. Finally, the severe limitations were removed, and I was free to breathe without continual observation. I started by purchasing a new phone and obtaining a new number. After that, my grandmother and I went to the bank to change my minor account to an individual one. Being able to use my own card and account without anyone's consent made me very happy. I started crocheting again. Therefore, I revived my Instagram account. My grandmother was really encouraging and even offered me a tiny room in her home where I could erect a temporary studio. A week after I moved out, I received word from neighbors and family that my parents had celebrated their newfound freedom with a party. Being able to begin their new family life, without the burden of my presence, made them very pleased. They shared a ton of photos of themselves laughing and drinking all night long, and they invited their pals who didn't have kids. At first, the news was painful. Just 1 week after I left, my parents were celebrating my disappearance, which served as a clear reminder of how unwelcome I had been in their lives. When they learned about the event, my dad's parents were equally taken aback. They contacted right away to find out what had happened after they had my new number from one of my cousins. I was honest with them about my connection with my parents and the reasons behind my departure. When they heard about the abuse, they were appalled and questioned why I hadn't contacted them for assistance. I described how my grandparents and a select group of pals were the only people I could communicate with due to parental restrictions. At this point, my dad's parents disclosed that my parents had never desired me at all. After I moved in with them, they believed my parents had changed, but they were mistaken. They pleaded with me to pardon them for their lack of support. In order to defend me, they also talked to my grandmother, who told them about the numerous arguments she had with my parents. Following this, my dad's parents decided to tell everyone in the family about what my parents had done. As word got out among family members and acquaintances, individuals began contacting one another to offer their support. I was taken aback by their empathy for my situation. Some even offered financial assistance, but I turned them down and asked them to promote my crocheting business instead. This is how my company started to expand. I received full scholarship acceptance to my ideal college around this time. Finally, a positive change in my life was on the horizon. My grandma lived close to the college, so I could go see her every weekend to crochet or spend time with her. My dad's parents chose to give me their old vehicle as a gift. I was able to see my grandmother more easily because it only required minor repairs. A friend of mine who was employed at a local newspaper contacted me to inquire about writing a piece about me. Since there weren't many young company owners in our community, she believed that my narrative might encourage other young people to pursue their own goals. I gave it some thought and accepted the interview. I hoped that if a child out there was trapped in a toxic atmosphere like I had been, they might read my tale and be inspired, but I didn't think it was a huge thing because I still had a lot of work to do on my business. It seemed odd to see my journey highlighted in the paper when the piece was published. Even though it was only a minor accomplishment, I felt proud of the effort I had put into my business in spite of all the challenges for the first time in a very long time. Other family members and friends began to contact me to congratulate me on my accomplishment, and my grandmother was quite proud of me. For me, this was a novel sensation. My parents never encouraged or acknowledged my diligence when I was growing up. My parents called my grandmother and yelled at her after reading the account. They demanded that I publicly give them credit for my business and accused me of betraying them by going behind their back. They had begun to receive criticism from relatives for their domineering actions. Additionally, they threatened to sue me and demanded that I give them a portion of my revenues. I started the business under my grandmother's roof, she told them forcefully, and she challenged them to try to take me to court, which they would undoubtedly lose. I wanted to yell at my parents because I was so upset over their actions, but I knew I couldn't. Instead, I invited my close friends and family to a little celebration that I had planned. Before I left for college, it was an opportunity to celebrate my business and hard work with people who truly loved me, a time I thought I earned. We had an amazing time. Naturally, my folks heard about it and managed to obtain my new phone number. They began emailing me, saying they wished they had never had me and labeling me an ungrateful daughter. My dad even sent me a lengthy text saying that I was squandering money celebrating with other people while he had spent his entire life supporting me. When my parents celebrated after I moved out, was it inappropriate of me to have a party to celebrate with my loved ones? Update 1. I had no idea my tale would become viral when I uploaded it to Reddit. I noticed that my narrative was making the rounds on TikTok in a matter of days. I'm afraid my parents might learn about this. Please pray they don't for me. Many of you have recommended that I permanently block my parents, and I intend to do just that. To let them know how their actions have impacted me, I would like to write them one last email. Despite what some of you have said, I am not a doormat. Since I'm still a young person and my parents are really toxic, it's challenging to cut them off entirely. No one prepares you for what to do when you have toxic parents and need to break off relationships with them, despite society's insistence that parents always want the best for us. I know some of you think I'm to fault for allowing my parents to take advantage of me, but keep in mind that I'm still a young person learning how to advocate for myself. Update 2. We appreciate everyone who got in touch with encouraging words and shared similar experiences. As I previously stated, with my grandmother's assistance, I composed an email to my parents. The email's contents are as follows. Dear parents, I've given our relationship a lot of thought, considering its past, present, and possible future. I regretfully recognize that, in order to further my personal development and well-being, I must cut off any contact with you too. I longed for your love during my early years and tried my hardest to live up to your standards, but I was never good enough. I have made several attempts over the years to gain acceptance in your life and to understand why you seem to despise me, but I have never been accepted. From my first recollections, when Mom made me drink milk in spite of my allergies, to feeling alienated in my own house, your behavior influenced how poisonous our family is. Nevertheless, I continued to aspire for a connection that never materialized. With Grandma's help, I discovered a sense of purpose and comfort in crocheting, which I believed could help us connect. But as I developed my company, your attempts to manipulate and discredit me have just strengthened my resolve to leave this poisonous atmosphere. Your attempts to control my festivities, threaten legal action, and insist on taking a piece of my hard-earned money just serve to further expose how toxic you are to me. I want you to know that this choice is not meant to be hurtful or retaliatory. It is a manifestation of self-preservation, a start toward creating a life devoid of poison and full of the affection and assistance that each and every child is entitled to. I don't mean any disrespect to any of you, but I must put my mental and emotional health first. I appreciate you encouraging me to be self-sufficient and undervaluing my abilities. I hope you both find happiness without me and wish you luck in your future pursuits. I ask that you honor my choice to stop communicating. Let's have a friendly separation. I'll admit that while I was composing this email to my parents, I started crying. It's really difficult to cut off your parents, even though I know I should be tough and keep in mind all the horrible things they have done to me. We are conditioned to adore them as children, and it might be challenging to overcome that mentality. I blacklisted them everywhere after I sent the email. I'm going to college in a few days and I'm a little anxious about it. My dad's parents and my grandmother will assist me in relocating to my new dorm. Meeting new people and forming friendships excites me. To everyone inquiring, even if I'm a college student, I won't give up on my successful crocheting business. My passion is creating original designs. I'll put in a lot of effort to balance it with my studies. As of right now, this is the only update I have. Update 3. My previous update was 6 months ago. Whoa. I'm amazed at how much time has gone by and how my life has changed. Above all, I am doing really well in college. Even though the classes are difficult, I'm working hard to keep my GPA high. Even though my crocheting business is doing well, I am aware that a college degree will serve as a safety net. In college, I've also made some amazing friends, and I even receive more crochet orders as a result of them. I've been able to meet new individuals and discover new vistas thanks to college. Compared to the loneliness I experienced at home, this is a welcome change. I even currently date a man named Kyle. We have only been dating for 2 months and we are still getting to know one another. We'll see how things work out because he's a nice man. I make it a point to go see my grandmother every weekend. We are still working from her temporary workspace to complete our crochet orders. The company is flourishing, and our clients' enthusiastic feedback is tremendous. Following my passion has given me a sense of fulfillment and purpose in addition to financial stability. It's been a quiet 6 months since my sincere email to my folks. They haven't tried to get in touch with me. According to my grandparents, my parents sold everything and left the nation in search of a new beginning since they felt that everyone was criticizing them. I have no idea where they are, and to be honest, I don't give a damn. It says volumes that they decided to go without making an effort to make amends or even offering an apology. Wherever they have gone, I sincerely hope they find happiness and are able to follow their lifelong dreams. It's time for me to concentrate on my personal path and on creating the life I've always desired. I would like to thank everyone who has been following my story and providing supportive comments. I am so grateful for your support. If all of this has taught me anything, it's how important it is to surround yourself with positive, self-affirming people. I am where I am now because of my grandmother and others who had faith in me. Most likely, this will be my final update. Thanks to everybody. Father called me worthless, praised my brother as his golden child. Now my revenge is about to begin. Since the narrative finally came to an end and retribution was meted out cold, I, 25M, feel compelled to tell it. While I was treated as though I had no value, my 20-meter brother was always our father's golden child. This isn't just your average family partiality. It was systematic, harsh, and had a lasting impact on my entire youth. From the outside, my life appeared to be ideal as I grew up in a California suburban home that was apparently upper middle class. We appeared to be the perfect American family. Mom was a loving presence, Dad worked in finance, and we lived in a wonderful house. However, things were quite different behind closed doors. My father was hardly there in my life from the time I can remember. On weekends, he would occasionally be there in person, but he was never there for me emotionally. He always used work as an excuse, citing late-night calls, crucial clients, and interminable meetings. However, Dad suddenly had all the time in the world 5 years later when my brother was born. He went from being an absent parent to the most dedicated father in the world, not to me though, like someone flipping a switch. At the age of 8 I became aware of computers. Mom thought I might like learning about the old PC she brought home from her office. It was love at first sight, and she was correct. As other children engaged in sports or video games, I found the workings of computers to be fascinating. After spending hours attempting to comprehend code and write simple programs, I began learning basic programming from library books. My mother recognized my enthusiasm. Although she wasn't tech-savvy herself, she could see how my eyes brightened when I discussed my most recent endeavors. She would spend hours sitting with me, asking me questions and pushing me to give straightforward explanations. "You're teaching me too," she would smile and remark. Some of my most treasured recollections are of the times when we shared my passion for technology. My fascination with computers, however, was viewed by my father as a personal failure, his inability to raise a normal son. "Real men play sports," he would say, his dissatisfaction evident in his voice. "Stop wasting time with those computer games." He never bothered to learn the difference between Python and JavaScript, which I was educating myself, and they weren't games. When I tried to explain what I was really doing, I was received with waves of disdain or eye rolls. He handled my brother in a glaringly painful contrast. Dad instantly became super dad when my brother, who was 6 years old at the time, expressed an interest in football. He attended every practice, coached his team, and purchased the greatest gear. Dad spent hours instructing my brother in perfect throwing technique, turning our backyard into a training ground. I would sit by myself with my computer in my room, listening to their bonding and laughter. My mom did her utmost to maintain equilibrium. She was aware of the situation and made every effort to compensate for Dad's partiality. She helped me set up for scientific fairs, attended my computer club meetings, and always made sure to acknowledge my accomplishments, even if Dad didn't. When she said, "You're special in your own way. Don't let anyone make you feel less than you are." I recall a specific night when I was 12 years old. I had just completed my first actual program, a straightforward game that I had written myself. I couldn't wait to share it with someone. I went to find Dad because Mom was working late. As usual, he and my brother were practicing football in the backyard. Before attempting to grab his attention, I patiently waited for about an hour. "May I show you something, Dad? I created a game." He didn't give me a glance. "Not right now. We're busy, don't you see? This is significant. This weekend, your brother has a game." Everything became crystal clear in that moment. He would never value my accomplishments enough. That night, I returned to my room and sobbed. However, I also decided that I would succeed for Mom and myself, not for him. Then my life's darkest day arrived. My mother unexpectedly died of an aneurysm when I was 13. She was there one day to make breakfast and inquire about my most recent coding project, and then she left. Although the loss was terrible, the aftermath was even worse. Dad's partiality grew obvious and unfettered in the absence of Mom's balanced influence. I realized my place in the family in the days after Mom's passing. Dad used athletics as a way to cope with his loss and threw himself fully into my brother's life. He was present at every school function, practice, and football game. In the meantime, I worked through my grief by myself in my room, seeking comfort in writing increasingly intricate programs in an effort to produce something that would please Mom. I can still clearly recall my first significant accomplishment following Mom's passing. I took first place in the state computer science fair when I was 14 years old. According to the teacher, I had developed a program that could assist in organizing the school library system. I had put a note on Dad's refrigerator 3 weeks before the fair, which was on a Saturday. I spent the entire day at the fair waiting, taking pictures, congratulating and watching the parents of other children arrive and depart. I gazed up in hope each time the door opened, but he never appeared. I learned later that night that he had attended my brother's football practice, which was simply a regular session and not even a game. He hardly looked at my blue ribbon when I brought it home. After saying, "That's nice," he returned to his task of assisting my brother with his homework. All the way through high school, the trend persisted. Dad's pride and delight was my brother, who was the best quarterback. His most recent game or his chances of receiving a college sports scholarship were the topic of every dinner talk. As I pushed food around my plate, I would sit there listening to Dad talk about how my brother will one day succeed as a businessman and follow in his footsteps. I got snide murmurs or outright interruptions whenever I tried to discuss my accomplishments in programming contests or the websites I was creating for nearby companies. Dad would respond, "That's enough about computers," and then return the focus to my brother's most recent touchdown. I developed the ability to keep my head down, concentrate on my task, and make plans for the future. I was aware that I would need to set my own terms for success. At 16, I began working as a freelance programmer, creating websites for local small businesses. Since I knew I would need the money for college, I saved every penny. With its assortment of computer components and coding books, my room became a haven. I was wasting my talent, Dad would murmur as he passed, shaking his head. I learned more than simply programming via my freelance business. I gained knowledge of project management, client relations, and business. I had a strong portfolio and a developing reputation in our local business community by my junior year of high school. I was earning a respectable income for a youngster, and some customers even began recommending me to others. I was reminded of Mom by a local bookshop owner who was one of my regular customers. She truly wanted to know what I was doing, therefore she would constantly inquire about my most recent efforts. She said she had never seen someone so young with such a good work ethic and even offered to write me a letter of recommendation for college. My senior year of high school was the true turning moment. A number of renowned computer science schools, including one at a Silicon Valley tech school, had accepted me. Because of my stellar marks, I was even awarded a partial scholarship. However, I still required tuition assistance. I made a thorough presentation for Dad, showcasing my scholarship offers, admission letters, and business strategy outlining how I will continue to support my school through freelancing. I even supplied data regarding possible return on investment and employment opportunities in technology. I prepared for weeks in the hopes that he would eventually be persuaded by a rational, practical approach. Less than 5 minutes passed throughout the meeting. He remarked, "I'm not wasting money on your computer hobby," without even glancing at my meticulously crafted pages. "Your brother has a lot of promise. That money is necessary for his upcoming business degree." My brother didn't care that he was having academic difficulties. Dad believed that I could do no right and my brother could do no wrong. I was unable to contain myself any longer. My voice trembled as I added, "Mom would have supported me. She believed in me." His expression stiffened. "She isn't present, is she? We also do things my way while you're living with me. Instead of wasting time playing with computers, your brother will pursue a legitimate career." I gave my aunt, Mom's sister, a call that evening. After Mom passed away, she continued to stay in touch, occasionally checking in and sending me birthday cards. She remained silent for a while after I explained what had happened. "Your mother would be very proud of you," she continued. "I'll see what I can accomplish." My aunt didn't have much money. Although she was a high school teacher, she ended up being my savior. She offered to contribute as much of her savings as she could. She informed other friends and family members about my circumstances and my potential. With the combined assistance of several of Mom's old acquaintances and my own freelancing earnings, I was able to accumulate enough money for my first year of college. I was determined to make it work, even if it meant taking out loans and working part-time. Dad hardly lifted his eyes from his newspaper on the day I departed for college. My brother didn't say goodbye since he was too preoccupied with football practice. The only person who came to say goodbye was my aunt, who gave me a big hug and gave me an envelope containing some additional cash she had saved. College was enlightening. I was surrounded by people who recognized and valued my love of technology for the first time in my life. My aptitude for programming, which had been disregarded at home, was appreciated. My work ethic and inventiveness were commended by my professors. I poured myself into my education, continuing to work as a freelancer and keep my scholarships. I began creating what would eventually be my key to success during my junior year. It was more than just another software. It was a fix for a prevalent issue I had observed while working as an intern at a number of IT firms. During a late-night coding session, I conceived the concept and felt it had promise right away. I spent every free moment I had working on it, including weekends, evenings, and in between classes. I could sense that this was different from my roommate, who thought I was crazy because I was continuously coding and not sleeping. This was my future, not simply another project. In the midst of all of this, I would occasionally hear Dad say, "Your computer hobby will never amount to anything." The words that had once caused me such pain now strengthened my resolve. I was getting closer to disproving his shadow with each line of code I produced. During my time in college, I maintained contact with my aunt. Like Mom, she was my biggest supporter and always had faith in me. She understood my passion even though she didn't grasp the technical aspects of my app idea when I told her about it. The statement, "You sound just like your mother when she got excited about something," brought tears to my eyes. Dad and my brother did not attend the ceremony, but I graduated with honors. But there was my aunt looking proud. Like Mom, she had seen my ability early on. There was no more obvious contrast between her sincere encouragement and my father's rejection. If Dad had cared to find out, I would have caused him a heart attack for the risk I took after graduation. In order to concentrate on creating my software, I declined multiple lucrative employment offers. I worked 18-hour days, ate ramen, and lived in a small studio apartment. My aunt still had faith in me and she would sometimes send encouraging comments and care packages. In the meantime, I was informed of my brother's difficulties in his business program through family rumors spread by my aunt. To prevent him from dropping out, Dad had to pay tutors and make large payments. Nevertheless, Dad believed that my brother had genuine potential and that my tech job was merely a passing phase that would ultimately fail. They had no idea how drastically things will alter throughout my time. But with the release of my app and the beginning of my company's explosive growth, that's where the next update starts. The events that followed would serve as the ideal pretext for the most fulfilling form of retaliation against their years of contempt and rejection. I'll reserve those specifics for updates, but I'm still in awe of how everything worked out. Karma, let's say, has a way of coming full circle, and sometimes the best form of retaliation is enormous success, particularly if you can use that success to impart some very specific lessons to those who questioned you. The upcoming update will describe how Dad's golden child's true potential resulted in a completely different outcome and how my useless computer pastime became a multi-million-dollar business. Keep an eye out. I continue to smile at the satisfaction of what transpired afterward. Update 1. Since my last post, it's been quite the journey. Many of you requested information about how my app really took off, so here is the whole tale of how my useless pastime became a multi-million-dollar business. I found the cheapest apartment in Silicon Valley after graduating, which was just a cupboard with a bathroom. The location was important, but the rent still consumed the majority of my savings. I needed to be in the center of things, where possible partners and investors might meet for coffee. It was a harsh first 3 months. I spent 18 to 20 hours a day coding while subsisting on energy drinks and quick noodles. I began my app in college as a way to streamline corporate communication systems, which I found to be a major hassle when working as an intern. However, it was a very different task to transform a functional prototype into a product that was ready for the market. The root of my breakthrough was unexpected. One morning, as I was taking a break from my part-time job as a barista to pay my rent, a man in a suit saw me coding. When he inquired what I was working on, I chose to give him my elevator pitch rather than my typical evasive response. As it happens, he was working as a project manager for a large tech business, handling the very type of communication problems that my program was intended to address. He offered to use his team to beta test my app for 6 weeks. I received practical input from real users. Although there were bugs, UI problems, and features that needed to be adjusted, the app's fundamental operation was sound. Above all, the team adored it. Even after the beta test was over, they began utilizing it for all of their projects. As soon as word got out, other teams in the organization wanted to use it as well. Their head of innovation, who was considering investing, was introduced to me by the project manager. However, they were hoping for more. More features, more refinement, more evidence that this was scalable. For 2 weeks straight, I worked non-stop to create new features and integrate all of the comments. My aunt, who is usually supportive yet concerned about my health, gave me care packages with coffee and snacks. When she said, "Your mother would tell you to take better care of yourself," I could sense the pride in her voice. It was a weird meeting with the investors. Wearing a suit I borrowed from a friend, I entered a room full of executives. As I displayed the program, my voice remained firm despite my trembling palms. There was silence when I was done. I will never forget what the chief of innovation stated next. "This isn't just a solution. It's the future of corporate communication." In exchange for a 15% share in my business, they promised to invest $2 million. Although the valuation exceeded my expectations, they also had other goals in mind. They aspired to be my first significant customer, deploying the software throughout their whole company. After that, things happened quickly. My initial hires were outstanding coders I knew in college who immediately supported my idea. I continued to live in my modest flat, but we moved into a proper workplace. Every dollar invested was used to grow the business. More interest was sparked by the app's success with our first significant customer. Other businesses began contacting them. We negotiated agreements with 3 Fortune 500 firms in less than 6 months. Our staff expanded from 4 to 20 members. Not only was revenue consistent, it was booming. We conducted a second funding round a year following the initial investment. At a $100 million valuation, we raised $15 million this time. The app my father had rejected was now a major force in business software. When I informed my aunt the numbers, she started crying. She then revealed to me something I was unaware of. 6 months prior, she had visited my father in an attempt to persuade him to make amends. "He just got lucky," was his reply. "It won't endure." However, it did endure. Indeed, it continued to expand. We continued to solve larger challenges, develop new products, and innovate. Prominent tech journals began to write about us. I received invitations to give talks at conferences. My name was well known in the industry. The finest aspect: I never once contacted my brother or father despite all of this prosperity. I kept my distance from them, concentrating on creating something worthwhile rather than disproving them, even if they could see my accomplishment in the news, on tech websites, and in trade publications. That tactic proved to be ideal as the subsequent events, which I will discuss in the upcoming update, demonstrate the precise nature of karma. Let's just say that my father's confidence in his business sense and the golden child's true ability were going to be put to the test in a way they never anticipated. You'll want to know how my brother's promised economic success worked out and what transpired when they finally had to confront the truth about how they had treated me in the past. Update 2. Since my last update, things have drastically changed. Do you recall my father's constant insistence that my brother had genuine commercial potential? That story simply blew up in a big way, and I was right there in the thick of it. I found out through business contacts that my brother, with Dad's support, had launched a chain of upscale sports bars. The idea was straightforward: upscale locations where business leaders could enjoy elegant game viewing. In order to finance this sure thing, Dad had to liquidate a sizable amount of his retirement fund. He was confident that my brother's innate financial acumen would ensure its success. My brother's total inexperience in restaurant management, he had never even had a service position, should have been the first warning sign. That was beneath him, Dad had always claimed. Rather, he appointed managers who were none of his former football friends and had no relevant experience. All flash, no substance, their business plan was essentially a joke. They utterly neglected fundamentals like inventory control and employee training while spending outrageous sums on ostentatious settings and extravagant decorations. My brother's conviction that wealthy people would pay anything served as justification for the exorbitant charges. After observing their operation, one of my developers, who was formerly employed in restaurant technology, declared it to be a disaster waiting to happen. Their inventory management was essentially non-existent. Their point-of-sale system was antiquated, and their staff turnover was skyrocketing as a result of poor management. From day one, the first location lost money. My brother persuaded Dad to create a second location, claiming that they only needed to scale up to be profitable, rather than tackling the underlying problems. Dad took out loans to make it happen because he still had faith in his golden child's unfailing business acumen. The violations of the health code followed. It turns out that things go awry when you assign inexperienced friends to handle the meal service. Both sites received numerous citations. A critical article published by the local restaurant review blog went viral in the business world, which is precisely the audience they were aiming for. The actual kicker: my brother had been manipulating the figures to keep Dad from knowing how much they had lost. They discovered that each store was losing more than $50,000 a month. Due to subpar service and negative evaluations, their upscale clientele had vanished. My business, meantime, was doing very well. We had recently signed an agreement with a large chain of restaurants to use our management software throughout all of their locations. This software may have avoided many of my brother's business blunders. I didn't miss the irony. Dad had invested almost all of his retirement money in my brother's failing business. When the second location failed even more quickly than the first, he had to take out loans. They had enormous debt and no means of repaying it. My aunt informed me that Dad had to list his house for sale. After his reputation in the local business community was ruined, my brother returned home. He was unable to escape the fact that he was incompetent after all those years of being the golden child with innate commercial acumen. This is where things become fascinating, though. Guess who had the chance to purchase the debt bundle that was sold to a collection agency? My company. That is correct. The universe can be funny sometimes, but this isn't how I had planned it. I haven't taken any action yet. I'm reserving that for later. My aunt recently told me that they're going to swallow their pride and seek my assistance, which is something they have never done before. You won't want to miss the story's conclusion, which will be revealed in the upcoming update. All those years of being the worthless son had, let's say, prepared the final scene. You don't always need to aggressively seek retribution. Sometimes the best course of action is to just stand back and let others deal with the fallout from their own choices. In Update 3, everything will come full circle in the most fulfilling way imaginable. Update 3. It's better than I could have ever scripted, and this is the last update. My brother and father finally arrived at my workplace yesterday without any prior notice or appointment. They simply showed up, seeming totally out of place in our contemporary computer environment. At first, they didn't recognize me. Since they last saw me, I've changed. Being successful has a way of altering your personality. My assistant messaged me while I was in the middle of a virtual meeting, saying, "2 men are demanding to see you. They say they're family." As I concluded my meeting, I made them wait in the foyer for 45 minutes. With screens showing our company's most recent accomplishments and press attention, I could see people becoming more and more uneasy through the glass walls. My brother continued to fumble with his collar. Dad appeared to have aged by 10 years. The expressions on their faces were amazing when I eventually got my assistant to let them in. Taking in the vista of Silicon Valley, the awards on the walls, and the proof of the success he never thought imaginable, Dad's gaze flew across my corner office. My brother and I could hardly look at each other. Dad said, "Son," without the normal authority in his voice, "you've done well for yourself." The compelled acknowledgement nearly made me chuckle. Even today, classic Dad was unable to offer a direct compliment. After a period of silent wriggling, I said, "What brings you here?" Initially, they attempted to dance around it. Dad made an effort to strike up a conversation about my computer business. He still couldn't bring himself to refer to it as a tech firm. My sibling gazed at his footwear. Am I the asshole for setting boundaries with my son's fiancée and refusing to accept her as a family due to her constant manipulation and pressure? Original post. I, 41M, have 2 kids with my ex-wife, 42F, a son John, 22, and daughter Sally, 20. I'm remarried to my wife, 28. I'm very close with my kids. My son is engaged to Abby. She seems nice but has been a bit pushy trying to create relationships with me and my wife, though she's also awkward with her. Abby isn't close to her family. She told us many stories why, and while some of her complaints don't seem awful, it's not my place to judge and I didn't live it so I can't know anyway. We've tried to be welcoming but Abby has forced her way into some family traditions where she wouldn't have been invited, and some where no one outside of a specific family would have. She has been calling Sally sis since they were only dating a few months, has an odd sister/mother-in-law thing she does with my wife, and the one I'm not a fan of, wants me to be like father to her. Not because we've clicked or anything. We are very different people. Not saying that in a bad way, just saying it's not based on how we get along or anything. My kids and I have a tradition when they come over that we have a private catch-up in my office study before they leave, which is now even more important to them because while they both get along well with my wife, they don't want to have personal conversations around her yet. Abby asked if we could talk, and after I explained the tradition, John later asked that I do it, saying she'd never had a caring conversation with her dad. We compromised that I didn't include her in the tradition but did join the 2 of them for coffee and let her talk. Then she started calling me dad. They weren't even engaged yet. John pulled me aside and begged me to give her that. Laid this whole thing on me about me always being the dad she always wanted right in front of her and she just wanted that. Told me she cried watching me and Sally together. She still gives me random hugs. I'm a lucky dad. I didn't like it but I do feel bad so I gave her that. She wants me to walk her down the aisle in the father-daughter dance. I don't want to walk her down, and I walk with a cane so dancing is hard. At my own wedding I only danced twice. John is begging for me to do one, preferably the aisle. They came over Sunday. John and I were talking. I thought to address it, when Ab walked in without knocking, asking if he'd told me yet. I asked what John said she wanted me to say about having a second daughter now in my speech and how I loved her. I just looked at him. She asked if I'd do the walk and dance for Sally. I said of course. She yelled she's my daughter too and I said it will never be the same, Sally is my actual daughter. I tried to explain that I'd talk about her being a happy addition to the family and I love how happy she makes Jack, which I thought was a good compromise, but she started crying. John apologized and they left, but he called me when they were home, nearly begging me to. Ada because I won't lie and say I love her or she's my daughter. Update 1. I had planned on writing this sooner but life got in the way in a couple of really good ways. But people were helpful and asked for updates, and I have a surprise-free day, so here it goes. On Mother's Day my kids and their partners go to visit my ex-wife. So it turns out my ex-wife and Abby are a lot closer than I realized. She calls her mom, which is part of where this comes from. Also apparently my ex has been egging it on. On Mother's Day they were talking about the wedding and I guess whenever Abby referred to me it was his dad. My son apparently told her to let it go, which led to yelling. Abby about deserving to be my daughter. Ex telling her that she's right. Son telling her that I am trying and she should be realistic about things. Sally telling her I only had one daughter, which was apparently a response to Abby saying to her that as my daughters, they should be united. According to my son Abby was crying, according to Sally she was crying and yelling and kicked something before going to her room, and Sally told me she went off on her mom, but will not elaborate so I don't know what was actually said. But knowing Sally, whoo boy. Around 2 a.m. I got a text from Sally's partner's phone saying Abby really is great, she hasn't been perfect but you should give her a chance and you will learn to love her. I saw it when I woke up. I tried to text her back but was blocked, so I called Sally but they were driving. They stopped by my place later that day because I am on the way and my daughter prefers my liquor and cooking and they told me about the night before. At the end I asked to speak to her partner alone. I asked if I had done something to upset her. She was confused and I told her I was blocked. She said I wasn't but checked her phone and I was, and I said it was after her message and she asked what message. I showed her, it was not on her phone anymore. At that point we brought in Sally and caught her up, neither of them were happy. A couple of days later, John and Abby dropped by unannounced. Not something we really do in this family, but okay fine, I had mad salmon, does not take long to cook. I cook 2 more, and my wife serves while I make drinks. The entire night was Abby trying to bring up the wedding. John trying to change the subject, Abby not allowing that. We talk logistics because I am helping them get some good deals through some professional contacts I have when finally she just says, so I was talking to mom, she said that you can walk me down the aisle and she'll do the dance, or you can dance and she'll walk, it's your call but you need to choose soon. I reiterated that I could not dance. She tried arguing that I had danced a little at my wedding but I made it clear that is different, and did not feel comfortable walking her. She got upset and said, Mom loves me, why can't you? I felt bad but couldn't lie. I pointed out that she had John who loved her, my ex-wife, friends, she had people who love her. She said, but other than ex-wife, those aren't my parents. I said, neither am I. She was very emotional so my wife and I gave them a few minutes. My son and I were alone later, he looked exhausted. He said the problem was that after Mother's Day Abby had called Sally and kept saying they are both my daughters, that I did not get to be close with one but not both, and that it was them against me. But at that one Sally cried havoc and let slip the dogs of war. Things were said, grievances were aired. John had to hang up before it got worse, but I guess Abby was shaken but there was a new problem. Abby had decided in her head that I did not mean what I have been saying and was just doing it for Sally. He told me he would handle it. Ron Howard. He did not. So now I get text messages from Abby every couple of days acting like we have a secret relationship Sally doesn't know about. She even called herself my secret daughter and lowelled. She invited my wife to lunch, saying 2 out of 3 of his girls going out. She has even started using the pressure of showing up at events like a recent barbecue to play a certain image. She hugs me more and holds it, wants to take pictures with just me or my wife and I but always a few with just me to post with captions I do not like. My wife is getting especially annoyed because of how she is with her. I guess Abby surprised her with Father's Day plans for me that had to be shut down. As it is she still inserted herself into the day. But she has a soft spot for her and when Abby gets emotional she caves. My wife is a sweetheart. I asked him if he was upset with me and he said no, he just wished it was different. He said we're good, but he's worried he and Sally aren't, which is when I took the advice of some people and suggested premarital counseling. He said he would talk about it. Abby is insisting Sally go to her fitting. That shop should pay-per-view that potential Royal Rumble because Sally is not holding her feelings back anymore. I told him Sally loves him and I'll talk to her. But for now it is stressful all around. Abby driving my wife crazy with her ideas for what my girls should be doing, driving me crazy with dad-daughter content, drove Sally to the edge, and oh yeah, last night sent me an email with 3 styles of father-daughter dances and song options, so I'm not feeling any more respected or heard than before. The 6 of us have barely been in the same room in order to let things calm down since Father's Day, which was great until it was a shit show. Sorry this is so long, with all the craziness this is still the abridged version. We are supposed to meet Friday. Sally's partner and I have a bet going about how bad it will go. So onward and upward. I hope you fathers had a less dramatic day than I did and by any chance does anyone know exactly how bad of a crime I need to commit to enter witness protection? Just curious update 2. I have gotten requests for updates on my situation, and as I enjoy a refreshing mojito and my wife her mojito, life feels good and the perfect time to amuse the world with my pain and familial drama. Plus a cousin of mine who apparently reads these and knows my situation gave me the convincing argument of dude, you can't keep people hanging. And how can I argue with that airtight argument? I apologize for how long this is, a lot has happened. My wife's pregnancy is going well, keeping her as stress-free and pampered as possible has been my focus. It is such a different experience this time, both because of how much more involved I can be and how much better a relationship I have with my wife than I had with my ex. My daughter Sally has been great. Even her partner has been great, helping with the nursery or driving her around when I can't. My wife doesn't know because it is a surprise, but my son has been building a crib for the baby, modeled after the one I built for him and his sister, to show my wife his support. My son is a good man, and he is still in there, he just has a soft spot for Abby. Which I guess gets us to the part of the movie where Godzilla shows up and starts busting up buildings. So I called a family meeting with my kids to talk about the situation. Told John his sister was only doing wedding activities she wanted to and that the guilting request needed to stop, that this was hurting his relationship with his sister. Sally was happy I said it so she did not have to yet again. I told him if he did not stop her from messaging me I would block her with a bluntly honest explanation why. We got a lot out, John seemed to understand, but then a few days later they insisted on coming to talk. Sally and I decided we would get everything out. So all of us ate at our place. Abby started in immediately about baby shower stuff and I told that is the kind of thing we wanted to talk about. I told her that I understood she has been trying to fill a hole that she has, that she thought she was getting a father, a second mother, she calls my ex-wife mom apparently, and a sister. I told her it was still possible but that she needed to start listening to us. I told her that for the sake of family we would give her a fresh start, if she agreed that moving forward she would respect our boundaries. My daughter did not love this idea but loves her brother and was willing to try. Abby tried to say that since we were starting over we could define what the relationship would be and just be family. We told her we were not ready for that it needs to happen organically. She got mad that I am closer with my daughter's partner, which is true but we just get along, and that she deserved it for trying so hard. My daughter said something about trying things we actually want. She ran to our bathroom, he ran after her. After a while I checked on him. I could hear her repeating, "This is not what I wanted." My wife, daughter, and her partner went out to the patio to give them privacy and salvage the night. After a bit I got a text saying they had just left. I checked in with him the next day and he said they talked more at home and she understood. For a couple of weeks things were good. The text stopped except the occasional wedding question, since it was getting closer. She stopped pushing herself on my wife and Sally, and we thought was involving us in less in wedding planning out of respect, since as it was they only got the venue at the rate they did because of my professional connections and they know I was willing to help but not interested in helping plan, even if I'm good at event planning. But then I got a call from the venue telling me the card I used had been declined. Now this is a specific card I use for big purchases because of the miles, so I knew it had a high limit. That was how I learned that they had changed dates by 2 months despite being informed I would still be out much of the money because it was too close to the date. I was furious. I mean, I have been lucky in life financially but I am not blow-off deposits like nothing wealthy. Called my son, said he needed to get his ass to the house, just him. They both came. When they arrived I opened the door. She actually started with, "Dad." I think I just replied, "You have got to be fin kidding me," and walked toward the table. Abby had the nerve to ask where dinner was. My response was not polite as I made it clear that was not why they were here. I hoped my son would not lie to me so I asked what was going on with the venue. She started going into wedding details but my son interrupted to tell me they postponed because my ex-wife was unavailable because of a surgery and he had not told me because he was putting money together to pay the lost money himself, and he had just reached out to guests to let them know. And that is when Abby's mouth opened. "We have extra time to work on our dance." Now during this time my wife came home, and I was walking her toward the bedroom when Abby said that. My pregnant wife with me said, calmly, "I have different feelings about that and will elaborate further shortly," or something like that. Then I laid my wife down and got her water, turned on her symphonic covers of popular songs and walked back to the table and said something like, "You are out of your fee and mind, have you ever been listening?" I made it clear I was done with this nonsense, we all were, and kind of lost it asking she did not hear us last time because her head was up her ass. She was stunned silent. "What a beautiful sound," and looked at me while I, admittedly with little filter, explained what Sally and I thought of our time with her and her attempts to force us to love her without even getting to know us. She started crying and stood up and shouted, "Then what was this even for?" John asked what she meant, if she meant them, and he started to freak out. She was frantic and said she meant delaying the wedding. Because, and I'm pouring another drink to write this, it was a ploy. My ex-wife and her decided if I had more time I would come around. Apparently my ex told her not to worry about the money because I am loaded. She has always been bitter. I make so much more than I did when we were married, as if that is out of spite rather than my career arc. I think she did that on purpose, frankly. But she not only told me that lie, she and my ex told John as well. He was distraught. Repeating "You lied to me," as she tried to spin it, but he was letting it out about how much he has defended her and covered for her, and she lied to him too. She was defensive and blamed my ex for telling her things and me for being stubborn. She yelled, "Why can't I just call him Dad?" And finally, after so long, I heard John respond, "Because he is not your effing dad." She started crying and something about his being the one that told she could call me that, and he said he told her she might be able to eventually, but he had told her again and again to slow down. She started sobbing and went to sit on her chair but missed and fell on the floor. Appreciating physical humor to break the tension, I admittedly chuckled and hid my mouth behind my drink. This all led to a lot of sobbing. I said I needed to check on my wife, and as I walked out she was repeating, "I just want him to be my dad too." I came out and he was walking her to the door and apologized. I said not to. They left. He came over a few days later and said they had a long talk at home. He even asked her if she would have dated him if there was never a chance of being in the family. He believed her when she said yes, but she admitted I was a big draw as well. I was the kind of dad she always wanted. My relationship with Sally is what she always wanted, and the way she said it gave John doubts that she loves him for him. I talked about marriage counseling, how his mother and I tried it, and, while it did not save us, it provided clarity and an impartial voice. I pointed out they both like coming to me, but I cannot be impartial, and if they are trying then they need to do it for real. Abby texted asking if I was the one who suggested therapy. I responded with, "Does it matter if John wants to?" She asked why it was so bad. She wants to know what I think, and I just said John is the man whose opinion should matter most to her. They fought due to the text. She agreed to the counseling and the wedding has been postponed. I may have done a dance. So they are in counseling. He said she struggles, but I obviously do not know details. She is pressing for me and Sally to go to a session with her. Sally told her she did not want to hear Sally Unfiltered, and I am not interested. Abby has been leaving Sally alone. She stopped texting me except for the occasional general question, which includes some attempt to go deeper. My wife still occasionally spends time with her because she's very into her pregnancy, more so than I like, but it is my wife's call. So that is where we are. Sorry it was so long, but alcohol makes for a poor editor. Update 3. I was told I should do updates here. People have been asking me to, and to get into what went down on Father's Day and at their mother's house. I have been extremely busy these last few months, but am enjoying my temporary unemployment and thought of this account because of the recent Thanksgiving drama. I will do an update and then we'll share what happened earlier. Oh, and to whomever made the joke that Abby finally got me to dance, that made me laugh. I shared that with the family. My time has been largely caring for my wife. I tend to dote, I know. We are having a boy. We are really excited, though neither of us really had gender preference. I have raised both, and both experiences were wonderful. Now we are discussing names, who we are going to honor. I thought everything had been quiet, but recently found my wife crying and found out I was wrong. Given how busy I have been with work, and my wife knowing I would be free again once we got into this month, my wife has kept this to herself. Apparently Abby has been pushing for one Thanksgiving this year. Things have been quiet with Abby. My son said the wedding blowing up woke her up, and that therapy had been helping. But then this. My understanding is that while John has been talking less with his mother because of all that happened, Abby did the opposite. From my wife's telling, Abby dropped by one day with my ex-wife. My wife intensely dislikes my ex-wife because of lies she's spread about my first marriage ending due to infidelity with her, despite there being no infidelity and the linear nature of time making it impossible for us to have slept together back then. Before anyone asks, my ex-wife does not actually think there was infidelity. I would get into that, but I am sure I would sound biased. Anyway, my wife looked at our camera app, saw who it was and called my daughter. Apparently the two of them were keeping things from me because I was working 18-hour days and they did not want me dealing with anything else. I wish they had not done that, but I appreciate the thought. I am really lucky to have such caring people around me. My daughter called her mom and said something that made them leave in a hurry. She will not tell me what, but she smiles when I ask. I called John, but he was dealing with some hard work news, so I just was there for him and left the other alone. The next day Abby came back, alone this time. My wife saw it was her and asked her what she wanted through the door. Abby said to apologize. My wife let her in, she is too nice, and after a nice talk Abby asked about the whole family getting together for Thanksgiving. My wife said of course, she assumed as much. A couple of days later in our group chat we were discussing details, who brings what, and Abby asks what else is needed. I say John already committed and she asked what about my ex-wife, what should she bring? In the time I have known Abby she has never made an intentional joke that funny, so I asked what she was talking about and she mentioned the whole family comment, and my daughter and I both asked what made her think we counted her as family. She actually replied, she is my family. I don't have a dad who wants me, just a mom, and my mom deserves to be with family on Thanksgiving. Sally replied, well, we'll miss you and John then. Abby asks how she can say that. Sally asks how she can be so stupid. John says not to call her stupid and I say that is fair, but there is no real way she thought my wife thought she meant my ex-wife. At this point my wife had filled me in. And then, this is so stupid. She uses my son's phone to add my ex-frigging wife to the group chat. She then thanks us for the invitation and asks what she can bring. As I was typing my daughter beats me to it and asks what she thinks she is doing. She knows she is not welcome, but says it less politely. My wife types, you could not have thought she was included when I said family. Abby responded that she was not coming as my family but as hers. Sally let her mom have it. She already is not talking to her much and said if my ex-wife is there then she is not. I mentioned there was never a chance X was going to come and said I understand Abby and John wanting to go to their mom's house so she is not alone. John typed, plans not definite, we'll let you know. He has since told me that he is not going to go to his mom's place but wanted to tell Abby alone first. All I can think about is the comment about not having a dad who wants her, because it means she is still thinking about me as a dad, I believe. Just a negligent one. I mentioned that to my son and he said he noticed it too and had brought it up at therapy. Because family is such a frequent topic, though I obviously do not know the details. Wow, I thought this would be brief, but that was a lot. I will get into the crazy stories later if there are people seeing this who want me to. I do not know how posting from here works in terms of anyone seeing it, but this has been good to get out. Relevant comments. Commenter 1. Someone needs to explain sunk cost fallacy to John. I genuinely cannot believe he is still with her after the sheer volume of times she has disrespected him, his boundaries, and your family. Maybe this was back in an earlier post, but has anyone really taken the time to reason with him that there are other women out there and he deserves so much better than this kind of relationship? OOP, I had a talk when this started. So did his sister. After the blow-up with the wedding, his sister and I took him out for a game and some time to really talk after. That was when he apparently demanded counseling. I am happy that for now marriage is on hold, at least. He is seeing her a bit more honestly, but is still too optimistic, in my view. OOP needs to let his wife know not to let Abby in when he is not home. OOP. I have asked my wife to never let her in if I'm not here after last time. Well, actually I had already asked her, but after the last incident my wife has agreed. You are exactly correct that she takes advantage of my wife's kindness, though once our boy is here I think she will be very protective and will hold strong. I have told John that Abby will not be holding our baby, at least for the foreseeable future. OOP and his daughter need to have a serious talk with his son about Abby. OOP. His sister and I had a serious conversation with him a little after everything blew up. It seems to be what inspired both his demand for counseling and putting the marriage on hold. He is better about seeing her honestly. His sister said something about Abby having similarities to their mother, which would have been fighting words from anyone else, and I saw the temper that rarely comes out. But then he listened because she clearly put thought into it. I never thought about it. I am proud to have kids smarter than me. I know my boy doesn't come off as a genius in these posts, and fair enough in that department, but professionally he is brilliant. She laid her reasoning out in excruciating detail. He listened though because she was not enjoying it at all. It was sincere. Some seem to have clicked because since that talk he has been different with her. I just am not getting my hopes up. Commenter 2. When two crazies are feeding off each other's crazy, they can start thinking anything is possible. I have a feeling that even if your son leaves her, she's not going to go away peacefully. Her and your ex sound like peas in a pod, unfortunately. OOP, my daughter really went at him pointing out their similarities. She made her case well and thankfully it shook him up.